Se lavo se umbun aho. Amazinot kepen noche me vindigan toliat izzi. So? What do you want?
And now, from the crypts of Winterfell, it's your favorite podcast of Thrones, Game of Microphones. With Lord Sterling, Sir Duncan the Fearsome. Winter is here.
7 blessings, drunken dragons, and sneaking seductresses, and welcome to Game of Microphones. I'm Lord Sterling, Sir Duncan the Fearsome, lurker within the secret passages.
And I'm Lord Zach, the King's Landing midnight street performer.
It was pretty cool. We got to see another one of those street plays like we saw in Bravos.
Yeah, a real mummer's farce.
Yeah, yeah. Horn farts and all. And welcome to episode 124. On this episode, we're covering House of the Dragon, Season 1, Episode 4, King of the Narrow Sea. And in case you're not already aware, this podcast is from the perspective of someone who's current on the show. That means you've seen all previously aired episodes of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. If not, there's still time to be slain in a duel of honor, so you don't have to hear these spoilers.
Warning.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. In consideration of further spoiler avoidance, we understand that most listeners have likely not read Fire and Blood, which covers this period of the Targaryen reign. Therefore, we will only be discussing events from the Dance of the Dragons that have already come to pass on House of the Dragon. It will take caution not to spoil drama that is still to come on the show. And if you're enjoying our coverage, please consider taking the black and helping us get out of the red by helping to support us on Patreon at patreon.com/GOM podcast, or making a one-time donation at PayPal at paypal.com/GOM podcast. You can help support us without spending any extra money by doing your online shopping with our Amazon link at gameofmicrophones.com. Thanks. Without any further ado, let's get into our top 5 highlights of House of the Dragon, Season 1, Episode 4, King of the Narrow Sea. So what'd you think overall, Zach?
It was not what I was expecting, but it was very spicy. All the interpersonal drama, family drama, politics, it had a little bit of everything. Besides, epic battle sequence. So there'll be plenty of those in the weeks to come and seasons to come. So This was an interesting change of pace.
Yeah, very interesting change of pace. A lot of, like you said, interpersonal conflicts and things like that. I liked it. I thought it was really well done. Even the spicy stuff was tastefully shot, very tastefully shot. They had a really good director or cinematographer with this episode. Yeah, pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. What do you got for your number 5, brother?
My number 5 was kind of right now doesn't seem like it's too big of a deal, but it was shocking to me and may have more implications down the road. But the White Worm, Sir Otto Hightower's trusted source of information, Massaria, Daemon's paramour.
Interesting. So I wonder, has she been a plant the whole time that she's been with him? Is he just using her to get info on Daemon? Does she even really like him at all?
Probably not, especially after all his shenanigans at Dragonstone, saying that they're about to get married, saying that she's with child, and she doesn't. None of that's true, and he's just saying it to get Daemon and Renera and Otto's attention back in episode 2. So she could have been playing him this whole time. It could have been something where she developed some animosity as time went on when she realized how little Daemon actually cared for her. But I mean, I think it's safe to say that now that's how Otto found out about the heir for a day, allegation that Daemon doesn't specifically refute, but doesn't, specifically say that he admit either. But she could have came up with that phrase on her own, fed it to Otto to sow division between Daemon and Viserys. But and the way we find out was, she's in there with Daemon when he's, waking up the next morning all hungover, and the little boy who was the actual spy, working for her, and all of them working for Otto. I think this is just kind of how I took the episodes. We'll see what you think, see what the listeners think. But the little boy came in there and gave her the money, from Otto, you would think, as payment for services rendered, for being, part of his little spy network. So Mysaria, not just, this little side piece for Daemon, she has more of a role to play.
I must have had to look away for some reason at that part because I missed it. The little boy coming in with the cash. But yeah, I was wondering how you figured out that she was the White Worm. That's pretty crazy. That is pretty crazy. I was very surprised by the revelation that it was Mysaria when I heard you say it. That's crazy. Anything else you want to add to your number 5 there?
I think that's it.
All right. I'll add a couple things to it. Just that the White Worm seems to be the analog for the spider in this case. I don't think she's considered a master of whispers or anything, but she's effectively serving the same role, at least for Otto, with her little birds running around, using children just like Varys as well. So that was kind of cool. And this kind of goes along with my number 4, actually, which was mice in the walls. And we got to see some mice, kind of lurking around in places where they would be, sneaking around. There were some mice in the jaws of Balerion, just chilling between his teeth.
Cool.
And they seem to be symbolic of a couple things. I thought that they represented the spies, like the boy from the pleasure house, which, like, why is there a kid anywhere near a pleasure house like that? But there seemed to be a correlation between the spies and the mice, who are always just kind of lurking around, listening. You don't notice them, but they notice you. They're out of sight. And they sort of also paralleled the secret passages that were found in this episode, and how people can be sneaking through the walls around you and you have no idea, just like the mice are. That was a pretty cool point. We'll come back to the secret passages in a little bit, and I'll bring that up when we get to number 4. But my number 5 was forgiveness, trust, and betrayal. And we saw this pattern play out 3 times in this episode between 3 different pairs of characters. First, we had Viserys and Daemon, and it was really nice and a touching moment to see them rekindle their brotherhood, and to have Daemon lay down the hammer of the crab feeder, telling Viserys to add it to the throne, which was really, I think it would be the only hammer on there, which would be pretty cool. Yeah, that's that big old hammer that the crab feeder was using to stake the guys into the sand, like Daemon ended up doing. Kind of remindful of Vlad the Impaler.
Oh, nice.
Which will be our historical parallel for this week. Who would impale? Sorry. Oh no, go ahead.
He just mic drops the hammer and says, "Add it to the chair."
Yeah.
He comes in, so he walks as far as he can, and up to the point where his breastplate, is, pushing up against the Kingsguard sword.
That was cool.
Just that they're doing a great job of showing little things like that kind of show his personality. And he doesn't care. Most people, as soon as the Kingsguard drew their blade, they would stop walking. But
right.
He's Prince Daemon. So, and he just mic drops it, add it to the chair. He doesn't say add it to the throne or melt it and, try to say something polite or nice. He says, add it to the chair, and just mic drops it. And then the Kingsguard put their sword away.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, your sword means nothing. I'm not here to fight. Like, I'm not worried about it, you know? And when he did that too, we got kind of a close-up view of his armor, and damn, that was some cool armor. I particularly liked the scales that covered the whole abdomen area of it. It was really cool. Nicely crafted. Great prop design. And didn't Sir Barristan the Bold say something similar when he threw down the sword when he got fired by Joffrey? I feel
He
like
did.
there was a similar line.
I have to find the exact line, but he said add it to the throne with all the others or something.
Yeah, there you go. So this was a really touching moment, like I said, where as Daemon is walking into the room, you know, everybody's like, oh my God, it's Daemon. And the whispers are spreading and everybody turns to look. And at first, Rhaenyra pretends to be like uninterested, you know, even though she had seen him swoop down over her boat and she got the excited look as he was flying away. We're seeing all these people that have been estranged for long periods of time forgiving each other in this episode. So here, Daemon explains that he was named King of the Narrow Sea because Viserys is like, oh, you wear a crown? Do you call yourself king as well? You know, and he explains, when we smashed the Triarchy, they named me King of the Narrow Seas, but I know there's only one true king in this realm, you know, and he takes off the crown and gives it to Viserys and tells him, like, the Narrow Sea is yours. And Viserys, while everybody was like, oh my God, as he was coming into the room and they're looking all nervous, Viserys got like a concerned look on his face. He's standing there with Blackfire. And it's not until he takes off the crown and kneels that Viserys is comforted in this moment. And he starts walking over to Daemon, and he's holding Blackfire like a cane. Sticking it into the floor, conk, conk, conk. Tyrion, sorry, with the Beatles. I don't know the sound effect I made just reminded me of that. But he's looking all aggressive and menacing, and then he tells him to rise, and a smile comes over his face, and they embrace. And Daemon rests his head on his brother's shoulder, and everybody's like, "Oh," you know, clapping. A really cool moment.
Very nice moment.
It was like a cathartic moment after, because you know how much Viserys loves Daemon. He's the one guy who puts up with him, and everybody else has been dogging him the whole series and everything leading up to this. But Viserys has always shown that loyalty to him. You can tell that they have a strong bond that developed in their youth that's carried through, and so their rekindling of their brothership was really good to see. And the next scene in the garden, they're reminiscing about old times and arguing over who was mother's favorite and everything. And unfortunately, they forgive each other. They're reestablishing trust, but it ends pretty quickly with betrayal as Daemon besmirches his daughter's honor in the realm's eyes by using her as a political pawn, dragging her to a whorehouse, demasking her effectively, and making sure everybody knows that she's there so that she would be lowered in the opinions of the lords. And Viserys rightly is furious about that and ends up banishing him. So we got forgiveness, reestablishment of trust, and betrayal. And we had sort of a similar thing happening with Alicent and Rhaenyra, who have been estranged since Alicent became the queen, and Rhaenyra was perceiving her as a threat. And Alicent says that she's glad that Rhaenyra is back around from her marriage tour, her suitor tour, because feels like she has no friends lately. And you really get the vibe from Alicent that she feels like a caged bird in this sort of like a Sansa vibe. You remember when the Hound keeps calling her his little bird or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
And they'd been pretty cold toward each other in the previous episode during the hunt and everything. But they sort of reconnect here. You know, Alicent suggests that Daemon go and look at the beautiful new tapestries, and Viserys and Daemon just like shrug her off, like, and laughing, like, stupid little girl stuff. You know, he has no interest in that. And you can see
literally just Yeah, they just laugh in her face and
it's so brutal.
effectively say, "No one cares about your tapestries."
Yeah. And you can tell she's crushed by that. And she maintains her smile. And throughout this episode, we see how dutiful and caring Alicent is, even though she's forced into this awful position that she doesn't want to be in. And this moment sort of symbolizes it as they're like belittling her and laughing at her, and she maintains a smile with only like a slight flicker of frown mixed in there. And I gotta say, her performances throughout this episode, the actress playing Alicent are really great. Subtle facial expressions. Very expressive. Same with Renera, actually. A lot of that in this episode that I thought I was pretty impressed by. I'm liking the casting a lot in this show.
Absolutely.
So at this point, Alicent and Renera are sitting on the bench by themselves, and we get to see sort of a rekindling of their relationship too, as Renera is sort of, picking on, inadvertently, it seems, picking on her station by saying like, "Oh, like, I'm so sick of being paraded around like a sex slave on an auction block," effectively, the way she feels. Because she's like it's not even like the lords are coming to her, you know what I mean? Viserys is like sending her around and making her do the legwork and to all these different locations, probably at least once to every kingdom is the plan of the 7 kingdoms, and having a suitors line up and everything. It's like she's, like livestock being sold or something like that. So it's totally demeaning, and I can understand where she's coming from. But she's talking about how it's not her ideal situation, and how much it would suck to be trapped in a castle and forced to pop out baby after baby after baby. And she doesn't realize it when she says it, that it's slightly insensitive to Alicent's situation.
Slightly. Just slightly. It's like, this is your life, Alicent, and it sounds like the worst. Who would want to do that?
And this is another moment where we get some great micro expressions from the Alicent actress that are really, say a lot without having to say anything. And Renera kind of like realizes that she was being a jerk and inconsiderate of Alicent, and she reaches for her hand and says she's sorry. And it's a nice moment where they're rekindling their bond that's been damaged by the moving of the various chess pieces over the past few episodes. So that's nice to see. But then again, it doesn't last very long, as Renera goes out and does her wild child act and then comes back and Alicent is like, "What the hell are you doing? Like, this is crazy." And they're sort of at odds again. Renera feeling like she's being accused by Alicent, who didn't really accuse her of anything, was just asking her. And then Renera being less than honest. And so they've forgiven each other. They're reestablishing trust. And almost immediately, Renera is violating that trust by not lying to her, because she says that Daemon didn't touch her, which I guess is a lie, because he did touch her, but he didn't, do the thing. But she's implying that she's still a maiden, which is not the case, and shows she's being dishonest, not with a direct lie per se, but by, talking around the truth, basically. A lie by omission. And, I mean, Alicent, this was a display of trust from Alicent showing up and giving Renera the heads up that, like, they're on to you. You better, do something, because these are the rumors. This is who it's coming from. She knows at least her dad. She doesn't know who beyond that. But she's giving Renera a heads up about the tidal wave of chaos that's going to be inbound in her direction. And so it sucks to see, one person trusting the other one and the other one betraying that trust again, just like Daemon and Viserys. And then we have a third instance of that happening in this episode, which is Daemon and Renera, who have themselves, even though they've kind of had like a buddy-buddy relationship leading up to the moment where he steals the dragon egg, they've sort of become estranged after that, as we learned at the hunt in the previous episode, when Renera says she hasn't seen him in all that time since she got the egg back, basically. And it's been 3 years at that point. So she still hasn't seen him until he dips down with with the bloodworm and buzzes her ship, which was crazy. The gust of the wind from it like causes the whole ship to list. And I'm not saying that Renera, the actress, looks like a goat. I'm not saying that. But I've seen a meme going around with a cute little goat with a little downturned mouth and then a picture of Renera. And
I've never seen them both in the same room at the same time.
I'm not saying anything, but having seen this meme and then seeing Renera fall over on the ship, those fainting goats popped into my mind. I couldn't help it. It's just because I saw that meme. You scare these goats, they just tip over.
Yeah, they just boom, they tip over as soon as something happens. I wrote down Daemon does a drive-by on Rhaenyra's ship.
Yeah.
It's a flyby, but I mean, like it sort of seems like he hit it. Like it really knocked it down. I didn't think about the wind just being enough to kind of tilt it. It seemed like there was a big thump, and then they all kind of went over to the side.
Oh, yeah, I might have missed
started to correct itself. But I mean, that seems very dangerous for your dragon and your niece who's on that ship to actually hit it.
Yeah,
so,
I don't think he hit it.
They didn't show it like hit and splinter the mast or anything, but it's very. I mean, it's a Daemon thing to do, but I just wrote down dragon drive-by.
Nice. Don't we get like a flyby like that in Top Gun, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what they do. The tower. They ask permission to buzz the tower, and he says negative. Because he does it anyway, and that's when he gets dressed down.
Yeah.
Have you flying rubber dog shit in a Hong Kong? A cargo ship, something like that.
Classic. Similar thing happens in Independence Day, I believe, too, when they're at the airfield, and I think the alien ships buzz the building, and then a whole fleet of them comes through and just starts blasting the tarmac and everything. So fun to see.
We get more detail. That dragon ship is this time, instead of zooming past it in episode 2 when Otto was on the way to Dragonstone, we catch it from above. They show it from above, and there's this big dragon figurehead on the front, and the feet of the dragon, on the prow of the ship is what it's called.
Trireme.
Right as it's, right at the water level. And you can see both details if you're looking for it.
Nice.
It's cool to get an overhead shot of that ship. There seem to be similar design elements from the Horsla Model X to this ship. The way that's kind of put together and the type of wood they use looks similar, but they're probably just trying to show the Targaryen
style,
line and vehicles of this period.
The Targaryen Horsla X.
And trying to think of a name for their ship.
Yeah, that's pretty badass. And there's a cool tracking shot where the camera is moving in reverse as the ship's moving forward, and it's keeping pace with it. And we get some good details of the architecture of the front of the ship and everything. Really cool. And so Daemon and Renera are reunited after all this time in the Godswood, where they have an interesting little conversation and rekindle their bond. And he leaves a message for her in her room, and we'll get into these scenes a little bit more detail later. But at this point, it's just kind of running through the order of events. And they go out on the town together, and they're buddy again, and they're trusting each other again. And then immediately he betrays her trust by bringing her into a situation she's way over her head, and she's like, what is this place? You can tell that when they get to the pleasure house, it's like just letting us know for sure that she's an innocent, she's unaware of this type of stuff, and she's naive, and he's taking advantage of her for his own benefit. He takes off of her cap when they walk in because he wants everybody in there to see what's going on, and he wants the public to have rumors to make lords less willing to wed her, basically, to bring himself up in line. If it's Daemon who sullied her, then maybe he's the one to wed her to preserve her honor.
Yeah. Westerosi shotgun wedding.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. So they rekindled and they forgive each other, and they establish a new rapport and trust. And then immediately Daemon betrays her trust and sets her up for a fall in the public's eye. And he's promptly rewarded, but with erectile dysfunction as karma for his moral indiscretion in their relationship. And we'll get back to that a little later too. But yeah, that's my number 5: forgiveness, trust, and betrayal. And there's sort of like a reverse situation of this as well with Otto and Viserys, where Viserys trusts Otto, Otto trusts Viserys. Otto comes to Viserys with the truth, and Viserys misinterprets it as being a ploy and a scheme, when in this case it really isn't. He was just given this information, and he's coming. He seems like genuine in what he's trying to do by informing the king and being like, "This is a situation that's going to have to dealt with. I thought I should tell it to you in private before the council comes." He's doing what a loyal hand should do in this circumstance. But Viserys is, interpreting it very differently, considering all the other circumstances. It's like the boy who cried wolf, he's been scheming and machinating this whole time. And so the one time he tells the truth and he's honest, Viserys is onto the game by now, and he thinks he's crying wolf this time as well with more scheming. And we'll get to his full reaction and what happens with that later on as well. But that wraps up my number 5.
Excellent.
How about you? What's your number 4?
My number 4 is, "It's over, Anakin. I have the high ground." Which may not make sense, but in the Godswood, after the night of fun and indulgence, Kristen Cole brings a message from the Queen. So Rhaenyra is summoned to the Godswood there by the weirwood tree, and Alicent starts giving her the business, assuming that she has all the information. And at first, Rhaenyra is on the defensive. So at the beginning, Alicent is closer to the weirwood tree, and the path goes slightly downhill, and Rhaenyra is, downhill from Alicent.
Right.
And then as they kind of have some back and forth, and Rhaenyra starts to reassure her, "Oh, I would never, I'm so innocent." Rhaenyra, pretty good liar. So as the conversation goes, Rhaenyra tries to find out how they've gotten this information. And finally, she uncovers from Alicent, Otto was told. Right then, Rhaenyra's whole attitude changes. She backs up and she realizes that she now has the advantage in this conversation and in this whole situation. She says, "Told." And I think she says one more line, and then she moves around Alicent, takes the high ground, where Rhaenyra's back is to the weirwood tree, and Alicent is slightly downhill from her, and they're about the same height, at least they probably got like shoes on. Rhaenyra's actress, she seems pretty short, but to where
yeah, she does.
From the side shots where you can see the weirwood tree and see both of them in profile, Rhaenyra is a little bit taller than her because she has the high ground. And from that point forward, Rhaenyra is in control of the conversation, and she reassures Alicent that Daemon never touched her. I swear on my dead mother, and basically regains Alicent's trust genuinely. And Alicent portrays that later to Viserys when King and Queen have a conversation about the whole situation.
Yep.
So I really didn't catch it on the rewatch, but I noticed that Rhaenyra's tone changed when she realized that this was all like third or fourth hand information, as it's now gotten to Alicent, who overheard it from Otto, who was told by, some little spy.
Yeah, good catch.
So, and Rhaenyra turns the tables on that conversation and literally changes position with Alicent. It takes the high ground. I just noticed the downward slope of that little path to the weirwood tree. And I was like, oh, Rhaenyra just took the high ground. So, by asking questions, she understands how Alicent got this information, and now she starts to poke holes into all of it and uses it ultimately to regain Alicent's trust, which is big because Alicent has the ear of the king.
Yeah, definitely important to get her trust. It's also interesting to note that a lot of these conversations and interactions are happening in front of the heart tree at the Godswood. And don't they say that anything that happens in front of a heart tree with its wooden face watching is sort of happening within the sight of the old gods?
Mm-hmm.
So if it was the old gods who sent a white heart to Rhaenyra in the last episode and favoring her for the queenship, Will her lust for incest and her dishonesty to Alicent, who trusts her, be frowned upon by the old gods in this episode? Will she fall out of their favor? Because it's also the conversation that she has with Daemon. She's like, well, there has to be some more reason than hunting my father that you've come back to King's Landing, and she's wearing his necklace, and she's like hinting that she wants him to tell her that he came back for her. At least that's the way I was reading it. So this like desire for incest is clearly on display in front of the heart tree. And I know the old gods are different than the seven. I don't know how the old gods feel about incest, but it's probably frowned upon.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, if the old gods are listening into all of this. And previously she'd been pretty innocent and noble for the most part. She's like, yeah, she said fuck the septa, but she hadn't been doing anything bad or sneaky or anything. But now in the same episode, there's like talk of like hints of incest in front of the heart tree. There's lies and deception in front of the heart tree. And I'm wondering if this could be a bad omen for her moving forward, that the old gods may not be so keen on her at this point.
True.
Anything else you want to add about your numero cuatro?
That's it.
All right. My number 4 was the mice lurking. And we talked about the mice representing the spies and the people in the secret passages, but I wanted to just take a minute and talk about the adventure of the secret passage here for a split second.
Maegor's Secrets.
So it's kind of cool when Renera arrives back to her chambers and she discovers that somebody's been there and they've left her these ratty clothes and she's all confused about it. But she
sniffs them.
They smell like...
She's like, who left me this trash?
And she finds the note and she unscrolls it. And there's a drawing of the framed area on the wall that's kind of shaped like a door, but there's no door handle, and it must tell the secret of how to open it or something, because she goes over and opens it and kind of falls in as if it's the first time she's opening it. And there's just like a look of wonder and excitement on her eyes as she starts to explore the secret passageways. And it's pretty cool. I was thinking that Daemon knows about the secret passages. He and Viserys probably explored them together as kids, I was imagining.
Definitely, 100%. And in episode 1, when he's over eavesdropping on that one small council where they're talking about him and the succession, he seems to be behind some kind of false wall or something. So yeah, I think Daemon definitely has the inside scoop on all of Maegor's secrets.
Yeah, so that like you mentioned, that scene, that was like a hint for us that it was Daemon in this scene. So having seen him peering through the wall at the small council meeting, immediately I was like, oh, this has got to be Daemon. Interestingly, it also means that he can access her bed chambers stealthily. So I don't know if that has any implications moving forward. But
yeah, so jumping ahead a little bit, but that shows you that if it was really just love or even just a carnal desire for Rhaenyra, that's what he would do.
Yep, he could have just met her right in the chamber.
But that's not what he does in this episode. So it makes you think about his true motivations.
Yeah, and I feel like, the way he's drunken the next morning, I'm like, oh, I feel like he even feels torn about it, because I do feel like there is a genuine, potential love interest, that he is attracted to Rhaenyra, but he feels bad about what he's doing and using her as a pawn for his own political maneuvering. At least that's the sense that I got from it. So his desire for power in this circumstance overrides his love and respect for Rhaenyra, just as it did when he stole that dragon egg. And so
yeah,
I think he's sort of regretting it, and the erectile dysfunction, the ED, like sort of symbolizes that, I think, as well. But I thought it was cool how he effectively lets Rhaenyra in on the secret here, that there's more to the Red Keep than it seems. Like you mentioned, Maegor built the Maegor's Holdfast, this section of the Red Keep, and had all these secret passages installed all throughout it. They make an important appearance in the books and later on with Tyrion when he's being whisked to safety by the spider Varys. And as they're passing a ladder, I think, in the books, Varys just casually says, "Oh, yes, and this ladder leads up to the hand's chamber." And he's like, that's where my dad is. He's the hand, And so Varys like plants the seed for Tyrion to go and crossbow Tywin, which is cool. But I thought it was neat that Rhaenyra is getting let in on all these little secrets, the secret of the dagger and the secret message, which can only be seen when it's red hot. That was cool. And since it's talking about the prince that was promised and, the long night effectively, it also makes it significant that that's the dagger that kills the Night King. It's like the prophecy is inscribed on that dagger, and it's the one that ends up taking out the King Resurrector. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, I love the idea of secret passages and stuff like that. So I was like living vicariously through Rhaenyra at this point as she's exploring the passages. And
yeah, I feel like the passageway was a little bit of fan service. I mean, it worked, very well for the story of this episode, but it's definitely something I think the fans, especially book fans, have wanted to see on screen, see more. We got a little bit of sneaking through tunnels, but we didn't get like how those tunnels interact with the main parts of that we see, Viserys chambers, the Hand's chamber, the princess's, bedchamber and their room. So to see the little, the secret door and to see her access it and then use it to get out to where Daemon is on the battlements and then sneak down, sort of like Arya did in the season 1.
Oh yeah.
Where she comes across the dragons and she overhears that secret conversation. And then she has issues getting back into the castle because nobody believes that she's the Hand's daughter. But apparently Rhaenyra was able just to stroll right back into the Red Keep, no problem.
She's got the long white hair, silver hair.
Exactly.
Can't fake that. And she can speak High Valyrian. So she'd be like, blah, 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 just prattle off some High Valyrian. And they're like, okay, we get it. You're a Targaryen.
Cool.
Yeah, that's a good connection, though, with Arya, because she also, like you said, gets into a chamber with dragon skulls. Hides between the teeth of one of them.
Mm-hmm. She hides back behind one of them. She's just such a small little girl.
In the books, that scene is even cooler because you're getting some various type stuff, and you're learning a little bit about how the passages work. He's like feeling his way through the darkness along the wall to like a specific stone, and like pushing that stone in. There's like no markings or anything that would discern it. It's like, how did he ever figure all this stuff out? There's like bizarre ways to open the passages, and they open up into like spiral staircases going down through the floor and crazy stuff. And
very cool.
Yeah, really cool. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for my number 4. I just am a sucker for secret passages and labyrinths and things of that nature.
Yeah, very fun. Very glad we got to see like a main character, the main character, more or less, especially moving forward, interact with the secret passageways of the Red Keep.
Hells yeah. So how about number 3? What do you got?
It basically the whole conversation near the end with Viserys and Rhaenyra talking about what's going on, what happened with her. But the key quote that I wrote down that was my number 3 is, "The truth does not matter, only perception."
Right. That is true.
Which, it's true in a way. I mean, the truth always matters. In my opinion, the truth always matters.
For sure.
But for a king and a princess leading a kingdom, the public's perception is everything. As Rhaenyra learned in the Mummer's Farce, as they got to watch the show, she says, well, it doesn't matter what they think. I'm going to be the queen, and it doesn't matter. Their opinion doesn't matter.
Terrible attitude for a ruler.
Exactly.
Even Daemon's like,
Yeah, that's a mad king, kind of a quote, or a Maegor the Cruel kind of a quote.
Yeah, or even Daenerys at some points kind of quote.
Yeah, definitely. So she's asking her dad, "You haven't even asked me what happened. You don't even, from her point of view, he doesn't even care what really happened." And that's sort of how he confronts Otto when Otto comes to him with the accusation. He's like, she was seen on the street of Silk in a brothel. So what of it? Basically, like did she have fun?
Yeah, that was kind of a funny response there.
And Otto was like, uh-oh, this conversation may not go the way I think it's going to go. But back to Rhaenyra and Viserys, and that's when he says, the truth, what actually happened in this case doesn't matter. Now it's the public perception of what happened. What, if the word gets out and all the lords and ladies of Westeros think that you're sullied and, no longer marriage material, wife material.
Yeah, sullied, good word evoking
exactly
the unsullied army as well.
Nice. Yeah. There's another S word I was trying to think of.
Smirch, besmirched.
I mean, besmirched is, anyway, I'll think of it later. But so it shows you how different lives that royals, if you will, live. It doesn't matter what really happened. If somebody and we've seen this in the real world, if somebody comes up with baseless accusations, whether it's against a politician or somebody, especially in the middle of a campaign or something, the mud's going to fly, and your opponents will throw anything at the wall and see what sticks. So they'll come up with all these baseless accusations, and the public's perception of it and how they might vote, in our type of republic, can sway elections and sway outcomes. So in Westeros, the views and opinion of the common folk, I mean, they don't get to vote on king, but they can still remember rebellions and that sort of thing are fueled by rumor and fear mongering and manipulation of the population as far as what a person has done or not done. And the truth of it, nobody ever really knows a lot of times. It's just the public's perception is the thing that turns the tide.
Yeah, and the same thing applies to stock markets and currencies as well. Stock markets can live or die by public perception of how a company's doing. Somebody can tweet out something that casts something into doubt, or vice versa, and stocks can plummet or rise.
Exactly. When Elon first went on Joe Rogan, and that it took the big puff
Tesla
of the reefer. I think Tesla stock, just did this quick little dip that came back
or something.
But it was like this huge dip just because he was on Rogan and smoked marijuana.
Yeah, or when in 1929 the banks called in their marginal loans, and it caused a run on banks. Or 1907 is a better example, when J.P. Morgan claimed that Knickerbocker Bank was insolvent, and it caused a run on the bank. And, you don't see Knickerbocker Bank anywhere around here nowadays, do you?
Oh, wow. I need to read into that. So that was a rival of J.P. Morgan, and they basically just...
I'm not sure if it was a rival or what the exact situation is, but it was called the bank panic of 1907. And as a result of that, J.P. Morgan, since he was the one who kind of like predicted it, because every bank is insolvent, they loan out money at interest, and they don't have the money on hand, at least at that point in time. So they never have as much money as the holdings. Yeah, so they make money by loaning out the money that you deposit, and they don't have it on hand. So when people made a run for the bank, the money was loaned out. Knickerbocker didn't have the funds to supply the holdings of the people who had made the deposits, and they went out of business.
Yeah, kind of like we see in It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart. Everybody starts to come in. He's like, I don't have all your money. How much do you need right now? I want my money now. And it's a cool scene. He finally calms everybody down and is like, listen, I don't have all your money. Everybody's right now. What do you need to tide you over? So
interesting. Yeah, I don't know if I've seen that. But yeah, that's exactly the situation, basically. People wouldn't take no for an answer. They wanted their money. And since J.P. Morgan had predicted it, quote unquote, he was the guy that was given the opportunity to come up with a better system. And he came up with the Federal Reserve. Interestingly, he owned the White Star Line, which owned the Titanic, and all of his major opponents, Guggenheim, Astor, and Strauss, were all killed on the Titanic when J.P. Morgan bailed out at the last hour before departure. And
dun, dun, dun.
It just so happens that Guggenheim, Astor, and Strauss were major roadblocks for the creation of the Federal Reserve. And Yeah, currencies in general, especially, well, at least fiat currencies that are backed by nothing, are entirely confidence-based and public perception-based. So if they, if the public loses confidence in the currency, they'll start selling off their currency. It results in hyperinflation, and currencies live and die by confidence as well.
Another funny one of maybe my favorite line of the whole episode was from the same conversation with Rhaenyra and Viserys, when Viserys finally says, "You put yourself in this compromising position. Your courtship is at an end. You will wed Laenor Velaryon." And she kind of comes to terms with that, and or no, her response is, "Oh, you're just going to marry me off to solve your political headache." He said, "You are my political headache."
Yeah, that was a great line too. You will wed Laenor Velaryon, and you will do so without protest.
That was just such a quick comeback, man. Paddy Considine is really fantastic as Viserys. You are my political headache.
Yeah, I am not familiar with the actor with anything other than this, but I'm really enjoying his performances throughout this series so far. He's done a really great job.
Very good. That was my number 3.
Nice. Let's see. What is my number 3? My number 3, Karma and Daemon. Daemon's frustration. Yeah, so we talked about the erectile dysfunction being the immediate karma for his treatment of Rhaenyra and abusing her trust, taking her to the brothel and exposing her to the public and intentionally tarnishing her reputation and, attempting to tarnish her chastity. It seems like this is sort of a recurring pattern for Daemon, that he's stuck in a position where he can't do a lot. And he acts out in frustration and acts like a dick, and it comes back to bite him. He stole the dragon eggs. He's, he's sent away from court. He does all this stuff that, he's chopping off people's limbs and everything, and that puts him in a bad position with Otto and everybody else, and they're like wondering how they have to deal with him. His actions in the first episode get him removed from the line of succession, as Viserys is, naming Rhaenyra heir. So it seems like there's like this self-fulfilling prophecy with Daemon, where he nothing is ever enough for him, and his actions lead to his situation just getting worse and worse. And it happens a few times in this episode. He betrays Viserys' trust and is rewarded with banishment. He sends him back to the Vale, to his bronze bitch. And I was thinking, he's like, wed Rhaenyra to me, and he's like, "You're already married. Go back there and deal with your lawful wife, all right?" And I'm thinking, a quick trip through the moon door, and he's single again, back on the market. May not be a good idea to go tell him to be near the bronze biatch, because he may kill the bronze. He may kill her, basically.
I think he'd just as soon just leave her alone as go do something nefarious. I was sort of thinking, if theory about some game kind of several steps down the line that Daemon might do is, if he were to get his way and get Rhaenyra as a wife, and if they had a child, then I could see Daemon doing something really nefarious with Viserys and Alicent's children.
Yeah, I could see that too. But also, I agree that he would rather just stay away from his wife, which is what he's been doing, like living at King's Landing and Dragonstone. But now, since Viserys has said, "You're already married, you can't have Rhaenyra," now she's an obstacle to his goals.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I didn't think about that. So, yeah, absolutely. We'll look out for the moon door.
Yeah. Your sister. He's going to push her through the moon door like Littlefinger.
Bro, I remember when I first saw that, I was like, Littlefinger. Oh, my word. I think right before that, the audience, we learned that Peter and Lysa Arryn,
yeah.
Were behind basically almost everything. No, I mean, Cersei was behind plenty of stuff too, but as far as Jon Arryn and the events that started, in season 1.
Yeah.
Littlefinger and Lysa Arryn were behind a lot of that. And that was like in season 5 or 6, maybe 5, where we finally got the reveal of who's behind all this stuff. And then Littlefinger immediately just, cuts the loose ends.
Yeah. Oh my. I've only ever loved one woman. And she's like, oh, me? And he's like, your sister. And so Daemon will be like, I've only ever loved one woman, Renera. Interestingly, though, the way that Renera has been sullied in this episode, another Lysa Arryn parallel. Lysa Arryn had sex with Littlefinger before she was, before she was wed and still a maiden. And I think that it was like a political deal that put her in the Vale because the Jon Arryn of the Vale was older and ailing, and it was he was willing to accept, she had been sullied prior because he'd already been married, I think, and been through it all. And there was some kind of wheeling and dealing that led to her being sent to the Vale, but it was definitely partially as a result of having slept with Littlefinger. So Littlefinger defiles Lysa and messes up her whole courtship marketability. And then here, Daemon, as another parallel to Littlefinger, who pushed Lysa through the door, he's got a woman that he doesn't like in the Vale either. He's the one that is responsible for sullying Rhaenyra's marketability as well in this
reputation.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, interesting. Littlefinger, Lysa, and Daemon, Rhaenyra parallels this episode for sure. The another example of Daemon and karma is when he betrays Miss Arya's trust with the lie about her being pregnant and everything. And now we're seeing this episode that he's been being rewarded by her spying on him and keeping tabs for Otto. And like you said, or like we were talking about earlier, it may have been happening all along, but, he didn't do anything to help the situation for sure. Like maybe if he treated her like a queen, she'd be like, I'm going to stop spying on you. But instead he's lying about her, spreading rumors, all this stuff. And it makes it easy for her to spy on him and get paid for it. She's even trying to be nice here. And she gives him, a hangover cure that she's whipped up, and he just dumps it on the ground. And then she's like, I'm sick of this bastard. And it's at that moment when the little boy shows up to give her the cash money. And she probably doesn't feel too guilty about it, considering the way she's being treated in that scene. So yeah, karma and Daemon, self-fulfilling prophecies, and just seems to be constantly frustrated and unable to accomplish his goals. And that seems like erectile dysfunction is a metaphor for that for that whole idea that he's he just can't finish when he wants to start, which is funny but sad also. So that pretty much wraps up my number 3. How about number 2? What do you got, bro?
My number 2 is a little bit of a conspiracy theory, but I wonder if the moon tea that Grand Maester Mellos brings to her at the end, he says is from the king, but I wonder if that's true. Obviously, it would be to the king's benefit if Rhaenyra didn't get pregnant. So on the surface level, it seems like it probably did come from the king. But what is our going theory about the High Towers of Old Town
Maesters
and the Maesters of the Citadel?
Yeah, that they're working together in some kind of conspiracy.
Potentially. So I'm thinking maybe it's not from the king. This moon tea is from the Citadel and the High Tower.
Yeah.
Because we know the High Towers want baby Aegon on the throne. And if the Citadel is working and their interests are aligned, we think, then the Maesters would want baby Aegon on the throne, as opposed to Rhaenyra or Daemon.
Yeah.
Or anybody else. So if they think that Daemon and Rhaenyra got together, so we talked a little bit about it earlier, if Daemon and Rhaenyra had a child, it would basically combine or at least fuse their claims to the throne. And Rhaenyra has been named heir. So her male heir would definitely, if they had a child and it was a boy.
Right, there's like a full-blood Targaryen versus a half Targaryen, half Hightower. The full-blooded Targaryen would take precedent.
The new baby of Daemon and Rhaenyra would be the blood heir of the named heir, Rhaenyra.
Mm-hmm.
So the succession would be almost irrefutable.
Yeah.
And would totally leave the Hightowers and, the Maesters of the Citadel out in the cold as far as baby Aegon and his claim. So it definitely, as again, conspiracy theories, not anything that I have nailed down for sure, because the king obviously wouldn't want Daemon and Rhaenyra to have a child either. I mean, I don't think, because he don't want Daemon to marry her. He sends him away. So, and he wants her to be marketable. He
needs her for the Valerians at this point.
Valerians and to solve that political headache. So Corlys, Valerian, and his son Laenor aren't going to want Rhaenyra if she's been sullied. So it's in everybody. In this case, it's basically in everybody's interest. But the thing is that nobody realizes, besides Criston Cole and Rhaenyra, is if she were pregnant, it's not Daemon's. It's going to come out looking like, maybe he's looked like a Targaryen, but what if it comes out looking Dornish?
Yeah.
So, that would throw everybody for a loop, because there's no way Daemon and Rhaenyra should have a Dornish looking baby.
Brown-haired baby. I don't see.
Well, what's going on here? What really happened that night? So that was kind of my theory of perhaps that moon tea. And so Grand Maester Mellos doesn't stick around. It's like at the psychiatric hospitals, take your pills, make sure that you took it.
Yeah.
Grand Maester Mellos didn't stick around and watch her drink the tea. So, he leaves and then the episode ends. So she might not even drink it at all.
Yeah.
So we could end up with a Criston Cole baby. So it's, pretty interesting. I was trying to think about that moon tea, and it's like, if it's not from the king, if you try to think about, who else would be
interested in that, making that happen,
to make sure that she doesn't get pregnant.
Yeah. Westerosi Plan B.
Yeah.
Speaking
Plan T.
Speaking of the Maester conspiracy, Viserys' back is all messed up, as we see when he's having sex with Alicent. It's like he's rotting slowly from the inside out.
Basically. Mm-hmm.
And the Maesters have allegedly been treating this. But I'm just wondering, since they don't like the dragons, theoretically, if they're just trying to kill all the Targaryens and poison everybody so that they have weak, controllable children, and that they don't stand much of a chance in terms of propagating and staying strong. If they're poisoning the dragons and making them smaller, if they're poisoning the actual rulers, who knows? This moon tea, interestingly enough, he was talking about how if you cook it up wrong, it could result in deformed babies. Also, Liza Aaron took the moon tea and it made her nutso. It can screw you up if you don't cook it right. So the reason that she's so neurotic and eccentric, we're told, is that it's from the moon tea, a bad batch of moon tea that she had to drink because of Littlefinger defiling her, and it messed her up for life. So, there's a lot of potential dangers. The Maesters could be intentionally mixing moon tea badly to sabotage Targaryens. Who knows how that's affected people. Aside from the incest, they say, flipping a coin, like 50-50 chance if a Targaryen's going to be crazy or not.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that could be from moon tea derangement from fetal alcohol.
I don't know how immediate those effects are known by a bad batch of moon tea, but this is even an even better conspiracy theory than I initially thought, because Grand Maester Mellos says he took great care in brewing it, but what if he took great care in brewing it bad?
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of Breaking Bad, brewing bad.
Boom,
and
boom,
because if she got a bad batch of moon tea, the High Towers of Old Town and the Citadel of Old Town, they don't want Rhaenyra to reproduce.
Yeah, definitely.
With anybody, with a Valerian, with a Targaryen,
they make her infertile for life.
Little boy Bracken or Blackwood, they don't. So if they gave her a messed up batch, that may solve one of their kind of one branch or one arm of their Targaryen problem.
Yeah, man. When she was being called to meet with the king, I thought they were going to do a chastity check, and I was having
that crossed my mind, because is that when they show her feet like walking down the
oh yeah, Possibly.
the hallway, and then she's escorted by the king's guard. And I was like, oh, are they going to do the maester thing? And because it seems like somebody in the original series has that happen, or they talk about it.
Maybe that was Marjorie was getting her chastity checked. I don't remember. Let us know, audience, if you remember.
Yeah, I don't remember it specifically happening. And maybe they mention it, or they mention that somebody off screen had. I can't recall exactly.
I remember like an inspection taking place on a bed with people watching and like craziness going on.
Bro, privacy much?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Okay, so yeah, my number 2 is Caged Bird, Free Bird. The parallel scenes between Alicent and Rhaenyra that are kind of taking place during Rhaenyra's excursion into King's Landing with Daemon. It starts off with handmaidens gathering to deliver candle baskets to various chambers, it looks like, now that dusk has arrived at the castle. And it's sort of a cool shot where they all meet together and they're picking up their candles that are dangling in these basket type things, and they all go off to different chambers to deliver them. Thought that was kind of funny. A little bit of behind the scenes action.
Right, yeah, how the castle runs. Yeah, even on the rewatch, I'm like, I mean, I didn't think of them as, that is the night's lighting for everybody's bedchambers and, library or wherever people are spending their evening and into the night. I didn't, until you just said it didn't click with me that these are just servants bringing the night torches, more or less.
Yeah, I was wondering about it, and that's kind of what I came to the conclusion of after sitting there thinking about it. Who are these people? What are they doing?
Yeah, what are they doing? Who are they? Yeah. What is the meaning of this?
Yeah, what is the meaning of this? And so it's at this moment when we learn that, speaking of being trapped in a tower and popping out baby after baby, Alicent has delivered yet another baby for Viserys. It seems to be a little baby girl this time, potentially. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe so.
And you can tell she's not having the greatest time. She's kind of bouncing the baby, and we see her from behind at first. And I thought that she was just having a freak out, like an anxiety thing, like she's chewing her nails and bouncing around. But then she spins around and she's got the baby, and she's, hopefully not shaking it, because you don't want shaking baby syndrome, but she's bouncing it around. And you could tell she's not too stoked about this whole situation. Like, she looks at the baby to try to comfort it, but she's kind of just staring off into the distance and performing her duties.
Yep. As a father of 4, I'm here to tell you that some days it'd be like that.
I can understand that. So, yeah, Rhaenyra, then it cuts to Rhaenyra, and it's going to cut back and forth between Alicent and Rhaenyra throughout the rest of the night, and it's like comparing the lived experiences of the two and contrasting them. So next it cuts to Rhaenyra, and she's walking down the hallway, and it's a cool transition, or an effective transition, because we can hear the baby crying in the background, so we know that they're kind of situated nearby one another. And she stops to say goodnight to Sir Criston, who, standing ahead, not paying any attention, kind of gives a half turn and wishes her good night, sleep well. And that's when she discovers the note and the secret passage. And she gets down into Balerion's chamber. Oh, I had a cool comparison. When she opens the door and finds the secret chamber, I felt like that was the moment when Alice goes down the rabbit's hole. You know, and like definitely. Everything is about to change from this point out. And so that was kind of cool. And she gets down there in Balerion's chamber, and candles must just be burned there perpetually in honor of the great dragon, which is nice to see that respect is being shown, as opposed to King Robert, who just like stuffed him down in the basement and got rid of him, put him out of sight. The mice symbolizing the spies and ne'er-do-wells creeping around. Daemon is awaiting her by the door to at the battlements, like you said, it seems, to an external stairway, and they slink off into the night. Rhaenyra is wondering where they're going. She's like so out of her element here. And we get all kinds of cool stuff down in King's Landing, dragon-shaped braziers that are shooting out flames, no doubt removed by the usurper when he killed Rhaegar and took Aerys' throne. and un-Targaryen all of King's Landing. Must have been a massive
except for the money.
Oh yeah, except for
I
the
remember
money.
in the original series, they're like, 10 golden dragons. It's like, Robert left golden dragons as the premier, like golden dragons. I think that was like the highest,
Silver
form of
stags.
currency. I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, they have silver stags, but the king doesn't get golden stags. They kept the gold dragons. I always thought that was kind of funny. I mean, they're probably real gold that was in circulation.
Oh,
so
yeah.
they're like, we can't, the expense to collect all the gold from the realm,
Remint
bring it to
all.
King's Landing, and remake it into little stags instead of little dragons. There, Robert's probably like, oh, I don't care.
Yeah.
Make me some silver
As
stags.
long as I have the gold.
Yeah, as long as I have the gold. Exactly.
He's just spending it like crazy. So I'm thinking as they're kind of moving through King's Landing here and seeing all the stuff, and like Renera should have been doing this the whole time to get a feel for her people that she's going to be ruling one day, and getting an idea of what it's like to be a commoner and all that. She seemed like totally out of her element this whole time. This is something that they should just be constantly doing, dressing up like commoners and going out with a King's Guard undercover, so they can get a feel for everything. So yeah, the somebody confuses Renera for a boy and says, "Fuck off, boy," which is funny because we've been picking up on Renera and Arya parallels, and Arya was confused for a boy as well after the Night's Watchman cut her hair in season 1 right after Ned was beheaded.
Oh, who was that guy?
Yoren.
Yoren, is he a Tully? No. Yoren. We may not even know his last name. Sorry, I was like, man, I love that guy.
I know, he was so cool.
What was his name?
I saw him in something else too. Captivating actor, He's got a good on-screen presence. So yeah, he slices off Arya's hair and she starts going by Ari instead of Arya, Ari. And just like switch around a couple of letters and it basically spells Ari. So that was pretty funny. And we get to see a creepy lady with no eyeballs who's like, "Do you wish to know your death, child?" It's like, how do you know it's a child? You can't even see. She's
super creepy. Man.
Clearly magical. Great special effects there. Or maybe they hired an eyeless lady for the for the role. A tragical cooking accident. Did I say tragible? A tragic cooking accident. Oh, man. So then it cuts over to Alicent, who's dumping water into the bath chamber or into the bathtub, I believe. And she sees one of the handmaidens kind of like smashing away at Viserys's arm as she's sponge bathing him. And she takes over the job of giving him his sponge bath. "Let me take that," and kicks everybody else. "Leave us, all of you," kicks him out of the room. And like I mentioned before, despite being forced into this position when she has to, and even when she doesn't have to, she stepped in here to do it. She's quite the caring and dutiful young lass. She's Otto would be proud of her for doing her job the best as she can.
Duty over love.
Yeah, exactly. And she's doing
it. She would
it.
love to be a free bird and out having fun like Rhaenyra, but she's trapped in a castle to squeeze out heirs.
Exactly. It's so brutal. And so then it cuts back to the, and we see Viserys's effed up fingers, like in this shot as well. He's got him on the bathtub and on the edge, and she walks over to it, and that's the arm that she starts sponge bathing with. Her softer touch than the handmaiden, a far kinder touch.
Yeah, they should have had the handmaiden scrubbing him hardcore, and he's like, "Oh, stop!"
Oh, I kind of thought she was like dabbing at his arm. I may have just seen it
where beforehand it was obvious that he was annoyed with how they didn't have what was it called with the doctor? Bedside manner.
Bedside manner. Yeah.
They didn't have nice bathing manner. They were just
Tubside manner.
Tubside. Yeah, perfect. They weren't having that, and so Alicent had to come in and take over. Even on the rewatch, I was like, were they scrubbing him super hardcore or something? But it looked like they were having a pretty deft touch. But according to the king, they didn't. So Alicent was much better suited for the job, I guess.
Yeah. So then it cuts back to, we see how how their nights are going, totally opposite directions. And it cuts back to the streets of King's Landing, and we get that fun performance of street actors with their over-exaggerated acting and everything.
Your Honor, I object.
You would!
Overactor!
Shut up!
Overactor! And they have Renera like poop on the throne, which is hilarious. And the guy wah, with a big old horn for the sound effect. They love their flatulence, because I remember some flatulence occurring in the Bravosi Street play as well. I think when King Robert dies, or maybe when Joffrey dies. I think King Robert. It's hilarious. So this was a really funny scene. And as they talk about how Renera would be feeble as a leader, she's like, boo! She had her own little input. Nobody knew it was her. That made me laugh a little bit. But, it's important for her to be seeing how the people feel so that she can modify her actions to earn their respect. And as their leader in the future. So this is important. She's learning some lessons here. And it also, she doesn't seem like she's super offended by the whole thing, which is good. Like, if it was Joffrey, he would have been like, all upset about it and everything. And then it cuts back to Alicent again, and she's finally finished with the sponge bath and sips her wine, blows out the candle. She's ready for sleep. And this is when I started noticing the juxtaposition of Renera and Alicent's situations, caged versus free, although both of them are about to be taken advantage of by older men in different ways. Unfortunately, they're both going to have a rough night of it in terms of that. So then it cuts back down to the street, and I skipped a part. Actually, yeah, sorry, I forgot. After they leave the play there, Renera steals a bit of something. What did she steal? Like a piece of bread or something?
I couldn't tell what it was, if it was food or like some kind of little trinket. I couldn't tell.
Yeah, it highlights the hypocrisy of Daemon, though, who's just lopping off hands for people stealing in episode 1, but here he doesn't care. It's the blood of the dragon, and like he says, their word is law. And they can take what they want, as he tells them later on.
That was another great line. Your word is truth and law.
Yeah, really cool line. So when we get back down to King's Landing, she's running through the streets, Renera, and she like runs into Harwin Breakbones, who's like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "Oh, Sir Harwin."
I'm pretty sure he calls her boy too.
Yeah, when they're leaving, he's like, what does he say? Oh yeah, stop, boy. Oh, the guy who she steals from says to stop, boy, as well. And then Sir Harwin is the third person to call her boy. You take care, boy. Next time you might not be so lucky. Pretty funny. Daemon's like, his attitude is, we have dragons, we can do whatever we want. The other lords don't have a say, basically. And it's at this point when Viserys sends his "you up" text in the form of a handmaiden coming to knock on Alicent's chambers.
Yeah, separate bed chambers unless the king desires the presence of the queen.
Yeah, interesting, huh? So that led me to believe that in the morning when Otto comes to deliver the message, he didn't necessarily expect Alicent to be in the chamber to hear about the situation with Renera at the whorehouse. And that may have been an unintended consequence. And it's only because Alicent told Renera and gave her the heads up and said that the information came from her father that Renera complained about Otto to Viserys and got him fired. So indirectly, it was Alicent's loyalty to Renera that got her father fired from the handship, which is pretty intense. So the handmaiden's like, "Pardon me, your grace. The king has requested your presence." And she's like, "The hour's quite late." And she's just like, "Yep." But, he's the king. Nothing you can do. Like, what are you going to say, no? So then it cuts back down to, it's clear sex is about to be happening. Then it cuts back down to Daemon and Renera, and they're entering the pleasure house, and she's just way out of her element. And like Viserys is doing to Alicent at the same moment, or at least the way they're showing it, Daemon is drawing Renera into a situation out of her control, a sexual situation that she's not necessarily all about, but he's doing it anyway. And there's just like all this crazy sex going on. It's like the tapestries all throughout the kingdom of the various sexual activities are like all manifested in full color now as we enter the whorehouse again. It cuts back to Alicent, and she's just lying there like staring into the distance as Viserys is on top of her, having his way with her. And although when he like looks at her, she smiles and like plays nice about it, she's clearly not into it. And these are all little things that when Renera comes back to Viserys and tells him like Otto is self-centered and self-obsessed and he's not thinking about things in your interest, he's probably looking back at all these little details like, well, she's not into having sex with me. She appeared at the perfect time when I was sorrowful to let me cry on her shoulder basically and be there for me. And he realizes that Otto's been manipulating him and that Alicent is playing a role in it as well. But it's at this part where the camera cuts to a shot above the bed looking down at them, and we see that Viserys' back is all fucked up and he's rotting away. And are the Maesters poisoning him? More of that theory. So then we're back in the whorehouse, and Daemon whisks away Rhaenyra's hat, and they know him at this whorehouse, and so they'll recognize him and who he is. And since he's with her, the silver-haired maiden that Mysaria has said they could potentially get for him, or the real one in this case, they're going to know who she is because they know who he is. Two people with the same matching hair like that showing up here in a family that's known for incest, and they're making a public show of it. And so Daemon is clearly doing this on purpose, using her for his own gain, exposing her to be in a compromising position to the public, making it more likely that she'll be married off to him. And she's out of her element. This is like a grooming type situation where he's plying her with alcohol and then luring her into a brothel and like exposing her to all this stuff she hasn't seen before and taking advantage of her, basically. I mean, she had showed interest to him, with, like hinting with the necklace and stuff like that, but this is all happening really fast. And he's like teaching her, marriages are just for, policy, for politics, but we can fuck whoever we want, and he's like, he's training her, grooming her about the realities of this type of situation as he sees it. Like Alicent says in her discussion with Viserys later on, that she's only doing this because of Daemon's efforts to corrupt her, which is, at least partially true. Mm-hmm. And we have a commenter who mentions this, and eloquently, we'll get to that in our Ravens calls section. Daemon's like, this is where people come to take what they want. Fucking is a pleasure, you see, for the woman as it is the man. And he's like enticing her into it, and she doesn't put up a fight, but at the same time, it's the way that he's going about this is wholly inappropriate. Bringing her out in public, it'd be one thing if he showed up in her chambers and the King's Guard is right there. She could call for help if he was being forceful or making her do something she didn't want. But as she tells Alicent, he was my escort through the city. She doesn't have any options here. What's she going to do? Walk home alone? She ends up doing that anyway and being in danger. But at this time, he's the boss basically of this situation, and she's following him around, and he's acting as her custodian and abusing that position of power over her in the most insidious of ways in this scene. And he's, simultaneously grooming her and using her as a political pawn to further his own ambitions by tainting her public reputation. And karma instantly hits him, and he can't even follow through with what he tried to start with the ED. But the damage is already done. Like he said, like Viserys said, the truth doesn't matter. It's all about the public perception. And Daemon doesn't even bother trying to refute Viserys when he accuses him of defiling Rhaenyra, because even though he didn't, which they mentioned inside the episode, they clarify that he had ED here and was unable to follow through with his attempted, defiling.
Yeah, to me, that didn't come across all that well in the episode. It seemed to me that he was having, a moral crisis, or he's definitely conflicted, but it seemed to me more of a logical, a head decision and a heart decision, because he knew what he was doing. Like, he's using Rhaenyra.
Right, even though he loves her and he feels bad about it.
Right, he's conflicted. So as she continues to try to play along, in the makeout session, she turns to
face him, and he can see eye to eye who he's doing it to. Right.
In the episode, it seemed to come across me that he basically had a change of heart in the moment. Him having, male performance issues, like, I didn't get that until the director was talking about it and after the episode. Looking back on it and in a rewatch, I was like, okay, I see, but I see where that happens, in the episode. But the first time I watched it, that wasn't clear to me. It seemed like he made a decision instead of being unable to perform. So I don't know if that could have been directed. I mean, I'm no movie director, and they didn't want to say it because it's like, it kind of ruins the whole.
She could have looked down and been like, what's the matter?
There's different ways to go about it, but I guess they didn't want any dialogue in that little montage of them, but
tastefully shot montage.
To me. Yeah. And to keep it, from being raunchy, they didn't go there.
Right.
With, her demeaning him or making some kind of joke at his expense. They didn't want to go there with the tone of the episode and of the scene. So to me, it wasn't really clear that was his issue. It seemed like he was having a change of heart, but either way,
it actually did come across to me.
Okay, nice.
Because I had remembered the first episode when he was with Mysaria and he couldn't get it up. And so immediately when he had like his drastic attitude change, there wasn't enough that changed in the scene in my mind to like trigger that for anything other than like he's having the same failure that he was having with Mysaria. And it's like, he's embarrassed. He can't say anything. He just has to leave, And then he's so hungover because he's drowning his sorrow from the ED with just drowning himself in his cups.
Yeah.
So brutal.
So that part where Rhaenyra is recounting the story to Alicent, he sank into his cups, and that was more or less the end of the night. That happens off screen because the last we see of Daemon, he is having his issues and he just leaves.
Yeah.
leaves Rhaenyra there, half dressed, totally alone in the middle of King's Landing. It's
so brutal.
This is the heir to the throne,
right?
And you just leave in your niece, and obviously somebody you care about,
danger,
at least a little bit romantically.
It's like you just made sure everybody would recognize her, and now you're leaving her alone without protection. Like, she was fine with you because you're the best swordsman in all the realm, But then she's just alone to fend for herself without her dragon, without anything. I think I'm going to bring up our listener feedback regarding this scene because it's really well written. Lady Rachel of House Kutevis says, the whole sequence of Daemon taking advantage of Rhaenyra hit me really hard. That was a fantastic display of real-world grooming, from drunken, hazy, confusing attention to being left cold, underdressed, embarrassed, and alone. Claire Kilner, ladies and gents, what a director. And yeah, I think it was really well shot. And the way she put it about how, the groomer will give you all the attention in the world, to amp you up and get get your blood up so that you're into the situation. But then as soon as they've had their way with you, they're just gone and you're left to put the pieces together and confused and pretty, well written. Thanks for the feedback, Lady Rachel. Nice to hear from you. First time feedback, I believe. So yeah, pretty crazy. And it's at this moment that we see the white worm's little bird seeing Rhaenyra as she leaves and huffs off. And just the parallels between Renera and Alicent were strong to me, the opposite. And when they end up meeting in the garden in the Godswood after this, they're discussing the situation and everything kind of comes to a head. And it seems to me that Alicent is very hurt by this whole situation personally. It seems personal. She seems very upset. Her face is quivering. More really good acting by the actress here. And it's like she sees all this opportunity that Renera has to make something great of her life. She can pick her own husband. She's the princess. She has, the options are limitless, and she's stuck in this cage in this tower with this old man who's rotting apart. Probably stinks with the, from the wounds and everything. And she's got to deal with all this, the trauma of giving birth and doing all this stuff she doesn't want to do. She's like living vicariously through Renera. She always has been. As the daughter of the hand, she would look up to Renera, who's the princess, and envy her situation. The grass is always greener on the other side, And she sees what Renera is doing out there and squandering this opportunity that she has that's going to limit her potential options in the future with suitors if they find out and or have it checked or something. It could be really problematic. And she seems hurt by this. Like she's in rough shape as they're having this conversation. I thought it was really well done. Renera points out in that scene that Daemon was her caretaker, which makes it like a egregious abuse of power to be grooming her in this, like taking advantage of his position of power, like I mentioned. Renera swears upon the memory of her mother that Daemon never touched her. And this is just like Viserys swore to her on the memory of her mother that he would not supplant her as the heir to the throne. So since she's lying about this situation and using the death of her mother here to cement her lie, I wonder if it's foreshadowing that Viserys's promise on the mother will also be sort of voided. And I'm wondering if he will end up supplanting her as leader or as heir in the future at some point. And you were talking about how the power dynamics shifting as she takes the high ground.
I have the high ground.
which is just awesome. Awesome that you noticed that. It was really cool. But the power dynamics end up switching again by the end of the conversation when Alicent's like, it was foolish of you to place yourself in a position where your virtue could even come into question. The king has strived to find you a good match, and so have I. And if that lord were to think you had been sullied, it would ruin everything.
You're spoiling everything!
Alicent Sansa parallels being forced into these positions and, viewing things in that manner.
If that lord were to think that you were being sullied, it would ruin everything. I know.
And she was just like verge of tears on this. And Renera calms back down and says, I know your grace. She calls her your grace, submitting to her authority.
Yeah, kind of sucking up to her a little bit. To cement that, try to smooth over this whole conversation and accusation against her. Yeah, it's
like she knows that she won the argument, so she's letting Alicent think she's in control again, or something. And she tells her she regrets it. But I thought that was interesting choice of words. Your grace.
Definitely, playing to Alicent's title.
Yeah, so that's my number 2 is the comparison and the parallels and the sort of equal and opposites of the situation between Renera and Alicent in this episode. Thought it was pretty interesting. How about your number 1?
My number 1 is part of this and going into Daemon's showdown with King Viserys after the night of debauchery. Basically, my number 1 was Daemon and his motivations.
Ooh.
So we see what he does, but what we're left to try to deduce is what is Daemon's end game? What does he want? What are his motivations for the things that he does? Because if he just wanted to be with Rhaenyra in a sexual way, he would have used that secret passageway and just gone to her bedroom and, had fun or whatever. But he didn't do that. He brought her out into town and she has a hat on and he has his cloak pulled way down, super Strider, Lord of the Rings, Aragorn style at the very beginning in the tavern. I mean, he's like way down in the dark, and he just likes to pipe, and you barely see his face.
Yeah,
but you
that's
can't
a
see
really
Daemon's
cool
face.
shot. I just watched that, and
oh yeah, I love it.
The ember puffs up, and
you can't see Daemon's face at all as they first start walking through. He's got his cloak pulled way down. They do the mummer show. They're both still incognito, and they walk into the brothel or the pleasure house, and Daemon pulls her cap off, and he hands it to this lady who's just standing there. Like in one fell swoop, one smooth move, he just goes, boop, takes her cap off. Rhaenyra's sort of like, wait, what?
Yeah,
hold on now. You're outing me. You're outing me, bro.
Yeah.
Don't tase me, bro. Don't out me, bro.
Don't tase me, bro.
And he immediately just hands the cap off to this, just a person who's standing there. I guess she works at the establishment, and then they continue walking in. And I think he had already pulled his hood down, or he does it soon after that.
Yeah, he had taken his cloak off entirely at that point.
So that shows you his intention. That shows you Daemon's intention is not to have a secret fun night out on the town, which is what it seems like at the beginning. Because he outs himself, he outs Rhaenyra without her permission or without even talking to her about it. Not cool, dude.
Yeah, that same thing. Not cool.
not cool at all. So, and then everything that we kind of covered what transpires between Daemon and Rhaenyra. So then, and we can talk about her and Cole later, I guess, because this is mainly about Daemon. Mm-hmm. But once Viserys literally has him dragged into the throne, dragged? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not
into the throne room, and he's still totally hungover and, doesn't even attempt to get up. They have this whole conversation with Daemon laying on the floor.
And then at the end, he takes a nap. He rolls over and
he just rolls over and still doesn't really move much. So Daemon says, what is the charge so that I can attempt to discredit it? And then he says, you defiled her. And I think that's when when Viserys kicks him. Yep. Still you say nothing. Oh, what does it matter? And then he says what they did when they were young. And he says, she's just a girl. Your niece, Rhaenyra, is a woman grown. He's literally leading Viserys to believe that they really did have sex, and that he's defiled her reputation is ruined. And and then we finally see, it appears, what we think is Daemon's goal in this whole situation.
Just to create that impression.
What lord will wed her now in this condition? And then he says, it doesn't matter what any lord thinks, you are the dragon. Your word is truth and law. And then Viserys, once again, I spent a lifetime defending you. Your heart is even blacker than I thought. Oh, bro, what a brutal line. I should disinherit her and be done, as I already did with you, and be done with it. And then Daemon lays his intentions out there. Wed her to me. And then he tries to cash in his, when they're seen in the throne room at the beginning.
Yep.
You said I could have anything. I want Rhaenyra. I'll take her as she is and wed her in the tradition of our house.
You're already wed.
Yeah, it's like Daemon. I mean, that is ruthless.
Yeah.
Totally ruthless. Use your niece in that way. The princess of Dragonstone, the heir to the Iron Throne, your niece by blood, and to just use her like that, make her think that it's a fun night out on the town where she can not be burdened by her inheritance and her
like
role
she says,
and responsibilities.
All she wants, just for one night, and he can't even do that.
And he gives her a little bit of that night, and then he totally uses her, leaves her at the brothel, and makes no attempt to discredit the accusation that Viserys brings against him, and just is using this whole situation to try to get Rhaenyra as a wife. And I don't even think it's because he wants her as a wife necessarily out of love or even lust. He wants her for the political power he can wield, especially if they were to have a male child together.
That's certainly a large portion of it. Although I think that he's trying to have his cake and eat it too here. He knows that Rhaenyra's into him. She's out meeting with the suitors, but she's wearing the necklace that he gave to her, like he's got his mark on her. They've have these like little back and forth kind of things that it's like, will they, won't they, but they're related. So it's weird. In episode 1, Mysaria, when he's having his ED issue, says that she could get him a silver-haired maiden if he wants. So I think that there is an element of physical and, they're like a love, like, I don't know if it's love or whatever, but I think that there is an element of attraction, legitimate attraction between Daemon towards Renera. So he's thinking that maybe since she's already on board with the whole thing, that he can manipulate the situation to make their marriage more likely to happen by, sullying her publicly and making it so other lords won't want her, so he can raise his likelihood of marrying her and also his likelihood of sitting the Iron Throne simultaneously. So I think it's like a mixture of the two. Like he has strong political ambitions and Renera's his ticket to the top, but he also like legitimately likes Renera. And so he's trying to do both simultaneously, and he's making a big mess out of everything as usual.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Alt Shift X was saying this whole episode is everybody making terrible decisions.
Yeah, great analysis. Just everybody making really bad decisions. Yeah, that was good. I agree with Alt Shift X completely on that.
And then Daemon is banished once again.
Yeah, and before he banishes him, he tells he's like, "I'll take her as she is and wed her in the tradition of our house." And Viserys is like, "You are already wed." And he replies, "That didn't stop Aegon the Conqueror from taking a second wife." And that comment throws Viserys over the edge. He's like, "You are no conqueror," and whoosh, pulls out the cat's paw dagger and holds it to his throat. And that's Aegon's blade, as we learn.
Don't bring up Aegon, because I got his blade right here for you.
Yeah, I rode Balerion. I have Aegon's dagger. I have Blackfire. You're no conqueror. You're just a punk younger brother who's fucking over his own family. And man, that drives him over the edge, and he almost kills him in that moment. But he doesn't kill him. And he doesn't want that comparison to be given, and he banishes him. And this is hilarious because he says, go back to the Vale, to your lawful wife, or, strive to restore whatever scrap of honor remains in you, or don't. Matters not to me as long as you are gone from my sight for good. And he's just like, "As you wish, brother." And he goes from his back and rolls over onto his side and makes no effort to get up. It's like he's like, "As you wish, brother, but first I'm going to take a little nap on the floor of the throne room." And he just goes to sleep on the floor for a little while. Hilarious. Because I sleep in that same position, so I recognize a sleeping position.
Nice.
Hilarious. Anything else you want to add?
No, I don't think so. Just Daemon being Daemon.
All right. So my number 1 is amputating the hand.
Nice.
And I thought it was interesting because Viserys had his wounded finger from pricking it on the throne, and his decision to not immediately amputate the finger led to the rot spreading and corrupting a second finger. And then he's got, partial 2 fingers that are still like looking like they're rotting, and he still hasn't amputated anything, it seems. Or maybe they tried to amputate, but I don't know. But the rotting hand, the corrupt and festering hand on his physical body seems to symbolize the corrupt hand of the king, that the position within his court. And so I thought it was kind of an apt comparison to draw between the rotting hand, his hand, and the actual hand who's scheming and working against him as well. And the longer he lets it happen, the more he's into Otto's trap, and the more Otto is winning, and the more he's not making his own decisions, and Otto is controlling him. And so finally, he ends up deciding to be decisive, and he amputates the hand figuratively and fires Otto Hightower, who just looks completely stunned that this is even possible. And it's in a really intense scene where he brings up the 5 days that his father was Hand of the King under Jaehaerys Jaehaerys' younger brother, I'm guessing. And he was a hale and healthy warrior and dragon rider at the peak of his abilities. He was the dragon rider of Vhagar, the second largest dragon that there was. Balon the Brave, they called him. So he must have been a badass. Although it was a time of peace, so who knows what he really could have done during that time. I guess there were skirmishes here and there, but and over a span of 5 days, he went from being top of his game, dragon riding, Targaryen, brave badass, to being dead of a burst belly, whatever that means. So he starts putting the pieces together and thinking that may have had something to do with Otto Hightower, who may have been manipulating things behind the scenes this whole time, working himself into Jaehaerys' court, working his way into to continue serving under Viserys after Jaehaerys' death. And it sort of like reminds me of J. Edgar Hoover, who was the head of the FBI when the FBI was founded. And he used his position of power to gather intelligence on presidents and politicians and people running for office. And he would get photographs and recorded phone calls and all kinds of stuff. And he used this to maintain his position of power as the head of the FBI through like 6 or 7 administrations of president. I don't remember exactly how many, but he used his blackmail power to hold his job at the FBI forever. And that's kind of like what Otto's theoretically been doing here. And Otto is like insulted by the accusations, but simultaneously honored by how Viserys is complimenting his capabilities and saying that he served Jaehaerys well. You served me well, but I'm on to you now. And and like, how long did it take before you chose yourself over your king? And he says that he's still reeling over Emma's death. He'll never get over it. But he realizes now that Alicent taking him through the worst of his grief and comforting him, that was a calculated distraction. And he's figured out that she was instructed to do that by her father, and that she might mean well, but that she's also just a pawn in this game. She's not into having sex with him, which she's able to easily deduce from her lifeless, style, basically in the bed, just potato sack mode. And he's finally putting together pieces. It takes Renera to lay it all out for him in that instant when she tells him the hand is self-serving, he's using you and manipulating you, and he'll stop at nothing to make Aegon crowned king. And he's realizing that it's true. And he takes some time to stew on it probably, and then has Otto in and reaches over and pulls the pin off of him. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy.
Yeah, hardcore. Standing right there in front of him, toe to toe, and just takes right off of him.
Yeah.
And he came to these conclusions when Otto came to him with the accusation.
Yeah.
And he said, you would spy on my daughter just to improve your station and, to manipulate things to your benefit.
But he denied it, so he wasn't 100% sure.
Right. But that's what he was thinking. And then Rhaenyra comes in and says, I'll do my duty as heir. I'll wed Laenor Velaryon, but you have to get rid of Otto Hightower. And she talks, confirms all these things that Viserys had been thinking about Otto. He's self-interested. He's doing things that are for him, not for the realm.
Mm-hmm.
And Rhaenyra comes in and basically works a deal with him. So I'll wed Laenor, but you have to get rid of the hand.
Yeah, it's interesting how she twists it around like that, because she knows that she's being used as a currency effectively to repair the relationship with the Velaryons in this proposed marriage that is going to be happening. But as a currency, she realizes that she has inherent value and leverage to use of her own. So she uses that deal to I know you need this and I'll do it, but on my terms, and so she switches it around and manages to get Otto fired.
Yeah,
and wow.
Really epic. So last week when Viserys, when they're back from the hunt at King's Landing, and Viserys and Rhaenyra have that conversation in the small council room about, I'll promise you on your mother's, memory, I will not supplant you.
Yeah.
Remember what seat she was sitting in for that conversation?
I saw a picture of this. She was sitting in the hand seat.
In the hands seat. And so now she has worked this situation to remove the hand who is obviously working against her, especially since now that baby Aegon has been born.
Yeah, crazy. So
thanks to Sir Matthew Repp for this line, Otto has overplayed his hand.
Yeah, he overplayed his hand. That's an Arnold quality line right there. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger always seems to have these like epic one-liners. He caught the train. I had to let him go. Let off some steam, Bennett. That's right.
Everybody chill.
Everybody chill.
As Mr. Freeze. That's my favorite.
That's a good one too.
And in this episode, did you notice Rhaenyra was sitting to the right of Otto in the small council? She was sitting in a seat and she had a little pearl in front of her. You only got to see her one time. It was kind of from far away, showing the whole room. But she's there in her seat.
Interesting. Yeah. So it seems like she's been taken off the sidelines, since we last saw her situation where she was the cupbearer. She's now seemingly in on the small council meetings and has a voice, which is cool. And she should, because if she's going to be the heir, she needs to be part of the decision-making, learning how everything works and being trained to do all this. So that's good to see.
She's a woman grown. So if Viserys were to drop dead, I mean, she wouldn't need a regent to rule, until she comes of age.
Right. She would immediately
She is of age. Yeah. So she would be queen.
She's got to hit the ground running and know how to do things and how it all works. So,
and not let a Cersei character come in and install their own regime.
Yeah. We should get those balls that they use for attendance for the podcast. I'll place the ball. And I'm Sir Duncan, and then you can place the ball, and you're like, I'm Sir Zach, and we're here, Lord Zach. Yeah, that'd be funny. Yeah, so that basically covers amputating the hand, the symbology, the symbolism of the rotting hand on his corporeal body, symbolizing the hand of his court. Then they're both causing damage to the host effectively, and he's finally decides to amputate. Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Excellent.
I have a number 0, which
awesome.
We should talk about before we get into our regular old notes, and that is the secrets of the dagger, and this dagger, the cat's paw dagger, and I'm assuming it's the same dagger as the cat's paw, although I have noticed that it looks slightly different. There are 2 gems on the hilt. The end of the hilt, instead of being gold plated as it was when Littlefinger had it, it's all bone and it's like dark black. So I'm assuming it's still the same dagger, but they've made some cosmetic changes to it for this, time period for one reason or another, a directorial decision. And so Rhaenyra goes to meet with Viserys, and we see that the dagger is in a brazier, being heated up, and the metal is all hot, red hot and everything. And I'm like, ooh, this is, I don't know what's going to happen here. It looks like a self-cauterizing blade. Like, what's he going to do? Although I couldn't imagine him like stabbing her or something, but he ends up pulling it out and telling her that the dagger once belonged to Aegon the Conqueror. And I've been wondering about the dagger's origins this whole, since the show. I just thought it looked really cool. There's a page, and I think of the Book of Ice and Fire, World of Ice and Fire, where it shows a diagram of the dagger. Or maybe that was a page during a book that Sam was reading through at the Citadel when he was training to become a maester. I think it was in the show. We see a picture of the blade in a diagram, but there's no information that's legible about it. Yeah, it's the season 7 premiere. We get a picture of the cat's paw dagger while Sam is reading in a book, an ancient book. And the page is detailing the use of dragon glass to decorate weapons. And next to the diagram, it says, the Valyrians were familiar with dragon glass long before they came to Westeros. They called it Zyrtis Perzis, which translated to frozen fire in Valyrian, and Eastern tales tell of how their dragons would thaw the stone with dragon flame until it became molten and malleable. The Valyrians then used it to build their strange monuments and buildings without seams and joints of our modern castles. When Aegon the Conqueror forged his 7 kingdoms, he and his descendants would often decorate their blades with dragon glass, feeling a kinship with the stone. The royal fashion for dragon glass ornamentation soon spread through the 7 kingdoms to those wealthy enough to afford it. Hilts and pommels were and are the most common decoration for dragon glass, if too brittle to make a useful crossguard. Indeed, its very brittleness is what relegates it to the great houses and the most successful merchants. So they've been hinting to some significance, but we haven't actually learned about it. And we find out here that it was Aegon the Conqueror's, it was Aenar's before that. I'm not really sure who that is. I can't remember.
Okay, yeah, so he mentions Aenar, and I thought that was probably Aegon's father, which, because it just made sense in the moment. He's like, it was Aegon's and Aenar's before him, and before that, it's hard to tell. But it's not his father. I believe it's his fourth times great-grandfather.
Ooh.
Aenar the Exile. And Aenar was the father of Daenys the Dreamer.
Ooh.
So he was the head of House Targaryen when Daenys the Dreamer had her dream, and they picked up and left Old Valyria and resettled on Dragonstone. So Aenar the Exile was the patriarch of House Targaryen when they left Valyria, and is the reason that the Targaryens are in Westeros.
Involuntary exile from Valyria.
Mm-hmm. He's the ancestor of Aegon the Conqueror, I believe, 4 times great-grandfather.
Nice. Good one. Good job there. Killer. Yeah, and before that, it's difficult to know. But we learned that before Aegon's death, the last of the living Valyrian pyromancers hid his song in the steel, and he pulls the blade from the brazier.
Before Aegon's death, the last of the Valyrian pyromancers hid his song in the steel.
And we can see in its red-hot steel that there's an ancient language inscribed and like a sentence or two. And she reads it.
From my blood come the prince that was promised.
From my blood come the prince that was promised.
And his will be the song of ice and fire.
And his will be the song of ice and fire. And this is the same message that Rhaegar had in one of Dany's dreams. Daenerys is having a dream at some point in the books, I believe. I don't know if they cover it in the series. They must. But Rhaegar is standing there with a newborn babe in a crib, a boy, and he mentions that his name is Aegon, and he says that his son will be the prince that was promised and that his will be the song of ice and fire. And there's been a lot of controversy about this, that it didn't seem to come true, and that people didn't like that Arya killed the Night King. But we have to remember here that the legend of the Long Night and Azor Ahai, who ended the Long Night with the Lightbringer sword, this is a legend from the Far East, from that followers of R'hllor know, as is described by Melisandre in the books.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not like Aegon's prophecy is an isolated incident and it has to be 100% accurate and his lineage being 100% responsible for this. There's all these different elements at play. And so Dany has a dream of Rhaegar, and we learn that Jon Snow is Aegon, and he's a prince that was promised by Lyanna. You know, promise me, Ned, promise me. And everybody's expecting Jon Snow to kill the Night King, but Arya has the blade, and Arya is the one who does it. And people are like, oh, what's the point of Jon Snow? What's the point of the legend then? It would have been impossible without Jon Snow. Jon Snow is the reason, uniting the wildlings together, creating an army large enough to hold off the Night King at Winterfell just long enough so that Arya can swoop through with the blade. If Jon Snow hadn't united the wildlings and made that giant barrier of soldiers.
Gotten Dany.
Dany.
Jon went down to Dragonstone and got Dany and her dragon.
Yeah, without the wildlings, the Night King and his army would have swept over Winterfell and killed everybody in their path. And so Jon was integral in this process of stopping the Night King, and I don't think he gets the respect that he deserves for that. Just because he didn't strike the killing blow doesn't mean that he wasn't the prince that was promised, and doesn't mean that he won't be important. It doesn't. The prophecy doesn't say that the prince that was promised would kill the White Walkers. He says that his will be the song of ice and fire. And the Starks being from the north and being like the winter is coming group, they are the ice. The Targaryens that are from the south are the fire, with fire and blood. Arya, he's the reason that we got the dragons. He's the reason that we got the wildlings, and he's the reason with his connection to Winterfell and to Arya personally that this battle took place there, and that this was the last stand. And people have a problem with Arya striking the killing blow. And they're like, "Oh, it doesn't make any sense. It should have been Jon," but it makes perfect sense to me because Arya was a disciple of the god of death. And what could the god of death possibly hate more than somebody going around and resurrecting thousands and thousands and thousands of people?
Creating a necromancy army.
Yeah, a necromancer is the natural arch nemesis of the god of death, undoing the work of the god of death. And so Arya trains under the god of death and learns the secrets of the faceless men. During her training period, even before that, after Syrio Forel, she's dancing in the tree branches with needle or with a broomstick. Silent as a shadow, quick as a cat. She was meant for this. She jumped, she swooped through with a knife, probably like on tree branches or something, into the godswood and took out the Night King.
Mm-hmm.
It was only
she blows
possible.
by that one White Walker. She blows by his hair, and he's like, "Whoa, what's going on?"
Yeah,
it's too late.
She was meant for it. She was small enough to be unnoticed. She was a girl, so she wouldn't be perceived as a threat. She could change her face to blend in anywhere. She's fast. She's been, she is the emissary of the god of death, who has the biggest reason of all to kill the Night King.
Yeah, and she has the dagger. The key is the dagger.
And the key is the dagger, the Valyrian steel. And she has it, And so the prince that was promised couldn't have done it on his own. He died. He needed the servant of R'hllor to revive him so that he could finish his mission of bringing together the wildlings and uniting with Dany and bringing her north to fight. So we have the Targaryen influence combined with the R'hllor influence with the resurrection. Just the prince that was promised on his own isn't enough. You need the whole dream team together. Michael Jordan alone can't win the Olympics in 1992. You needed Barkley, you needed Bird, you needed that whole team together. And so the prince that was promised, he may be Michael Jordan. He may have killed a White Walker himself and united the wildlings. But you need the whole team. And it took the Targaryens, it took R'hllor and Melisandre, it took the influence of the god of death working through Arya and training her. And only with all of these influences combined were they able to finally work together to defeat the Night King. Just because Jon didn't strike the killing blow doesn't mean he wasn't important. And it makes sense that it was Arya, considering that, her master is the arch nemesis of the Night King in terms of death and life and resurrection. And, there's all these different names. The prince that was promised, Azor Ahai. There's another name for this figure. Throughout history, there are all these different, cultures have this same legend, kind of like how everybody has a legend of the Great Flood in the real world. All these different cultures throughout Essos and Westeros have their own tellings of the Long Night and of this hero and of the sword and everything. So none of them alone in isolation is powerful enough to complete the task. And I thought it was awesome how it's only working together as a team that they can all come together and play their parts. And the prince that was promised did his job and got everybody together, buying just enough time so that the goddess of death, the servant of death, could swoop through and stab that bastard with that dope move, dropping the blade and catching it and stabbing him. Oh man, that was cool. And the legend says that a Targaryen must be king when this happens, but there is no Targaryen king, which is where the drama comes from because the kingdoms have fractured and there's no dragons to help out. But Jon Snow manages to pull them all together at the last second. We have dragons and we have the wildlings making up for the southern kingdoms under the control of Cersei who aren't participating. And they're able to all together, by the skin of their teeth, mount just enough of a resistance to stop the Night King temporarily, but it's not enough. Jon can't get through. The Night King saw him kill that White Walker at Hardhome. He's on his radar. He's got the dead dragon fixed on Jon, but Arya, she's anonymous. She's been off by herself. She's been switching faces. She's untraceable. She's not on the Night King's radar. Everybody thinks it's going to be Jon. The Night King thinks that Jon is the most dangerous threat to him. He's not paying attention for Arya. She's invisible. She's a ghost, and she comes out of nowhere and gets the job done, and it was awesome. So yeah, I like the element of teamwork. I like how all these various legends and gods all came from all over Essos and Westeros in this final moment of desperation to combine forces and work together to take down the Night King. And it's really exciting to me to see this dagger on screen and learn this cool secret about it that it's pretty unique creative writing that you heat up the blade and a secret message emerges. It kind of reminds me of those like secret messages written in lemon oil that only appear when you apply a flame to a surface for a brief moment of time. You remember seeing those things?
Yeah. Or when Frodo tosses the ring into the fire at the beginning in the Hobbits, in the town where they live, Hobbiton.
Oh, it tosses it into the fire in Hobbiton. Gotcha.
At the very beginning.
In the envelope.
It's
Isn't
in
it
the
Gandalf
envelope.
who tosses it in?
Yeah. Or maybe it's Gandalf. After he comes back. I can't remember. Is it secret? Is it safe? Yeah, I think he comes back and he's sitting there smoking his pipe and he throws it in there. I think he's smoking his pipe afterwards. But the envelope burns away.
Yep.
And the ring is sitting there and you're like, what's happening? And then the Mordor, is it Elvish or like the Mordor language kind of comes to life around the outside of the ring once it's in the fire.
So you could say this is like a total Tolkien ripoff. I guess it's not really that creative, like I was thinking.
But, I mean, it's a ring versus a dagger, so
true,
that's
but
kind
it's
of a
like
different element.
J.R.R. Tolkien, G.R.R. Martin, rings, blades. He was clearly very inspired by J.R.R. Tolkien in a number of things.
No doubt.
Yeah. So yeah, a couple other cool little things to note in this scene while he's revealing the dagger and its secrets. He's talking about this responsibility to Spider-Man. I mean, to Renera. The responsibility is, I have handed to you the burden of this knowledge. It is larger than the throne, the king. It is larger than you and your desires. And he kind of like changes the conversation topic in that moment by like twisting the end of that sentence and becoming more aggravated with his delivery of it. I thought it was a great way that he escalated that sentence toward the end there and changed the meaning by the delivery.
Right. Yeah. It started a seemingly interesting, mysterious conversation, and then he's turning the conversation into what he really wants to talk about.
Right.
Rhaenyra and her exploits.
So he's like using the importance of the dagger, like the message within the dagger and Aegon's dreams as a pretext or an impetus to get Rhaenyra to rein in her craziness and control her behaviors and her desires, because this is more important. Like, we're all working towards this greater end from this prophecy. Pretty funny. Pretty good.
I love at the very beginning, she walks in, she doesn't see anybody, and the Kingsguard stand there for a second, and then they kind of look at each other, and they close the door, and she walks over to the brazier, and she's about to touch the dagger, and he says, "That dagger," and she jumps back.
That dagger.
Really cool. We're mindful of how Daenerys has the dragon egg on all of the coals and reaches over and touches it, and the servant Missandei or somebody touches it, and it's burned, and then Daenerys can handle it without a problem. Sort of remindful of that. Since we're talking about this scene, might as well just go through the lines. She talks about how if she were born a man, she could bed whomever she wanted, father a dozen bastards, just like King Robert with Gendry, for example, and no one would blink an eye, just like nobody blinked an eye for King Robert. And he's like, yeah, but you were born a woman. And it's the similar thing in our society, like whether or not it's right or wrong. The two sexes are judged with different standards when it comes to promiscuosity. And the same is clearly similar in Westeros. And, this part is great because it's at this point he brings up how he like her courtship is over and she's going to marry Laenor Velaryon, and he has this great rant. You are my political headache, Your wedding to Sir Laenor Valerian will unite the two most powerful houses in the realm. With the combined strength of our shared dragons and naval fleets, no one would dare stand against us. And did you get the Star Wars reference in this moment?
When Vader is trying to get Luke to join him?
Yeah.
Your wedding to Selena Valarian will unite the two most powerful houses in the realm. With the combined strength of our shared dragons and naval fleets, no one would dare to stand against us. The House of the Dragon will stand as one for a further generation.
With our combined strength, we can end this destructive conflict and bring order to the galaxy.
They use the same phrase, combined strength.
Nice.
So I felt like that was a subtle little Vader reference.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't catch that at all.
The second I heard it, I was like, oh, it's Darth Vader. So the House of the Dragon will stand as one for a further generation. Pretty badass. Always got to love a good Star Wars reference, you know? So yeah, this is also on my rewatch when I realized that it was only because of Alicent informing Rhaenyra that Otto got the info on her that it resulted in Otto being fired as the Hand, and so she's partially to blame for that. Negative externalities. And then so the Maester comes through, and we talked about it at the Moon Tea, as they call it, Westerosi Plan B. He says to her, "It will rid you of any unwanted consequences." And I was like, not a broken hymen, though. That's an unwanted consequence that'll remain. But my mom was like, "Oh, but she rides horses and stuff," and I was like, "And dragons," So odds are, it could have been busted by riding on a dragon, and that'd be as good an excuse as any other.
Mm-hmm.
So she can only say that if it comes down to it. You got any other notes that you would like to mention?
At the very beginning, Blackwoods versus Brackens.
Yeah.
A feud as old as time. A feud as old as time.
That's what I was thinking. What is wrong with us?
Did you catch Lord Dondarrion's name? His first name?
Beric Dondarrion.
Beric Dondarrion. That's cool.
That was exciting. The Lightning Lord.
Who did that guy remind you of? The actor.
Oh, the actor?
Yeah.
I don't know. Who to remind you of?
The Blackfish.
Oh, yeah, that's true. They are pretty similar looking. And
looking, and they're kind of, they're trying to be, suave and smooth and, cool in that 50s to 60s age time frame.
Yeah. Definitely. Although this guy seemed a little bit more out of it, like, oh.
Yeah, at the end they try to play him off as old. He had to go over there and pour himself some wine or water or something just to continue his spiel. And Rhaenyra's like, "Bro, that was like 50 years ago." She asked him about Queen Alysanne. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, that was hilarious. Snarky, very snarky.
Yeah, and even, so I'm pretty sure, I know for sure that was Lord Baratheon sitting beside her, but I'm thinking they were at Storm's End.
Yeah, that's what I realized too eventually.
We've never seen before. We've never been inside Storm's End. Beautiful
room. I loved the architecture, like big rows of like columns kind of built into the wall that get wider towards the base, and like an ovular style room. Storm's End is known for having the thickest walls in all of Westeros.
Like 60 feet thick, maybe thicker.
Somewhere between that, between 40 and 60. I can't remember exactly. I thought it was 40, but it could be more. Maybe it's wider and thinner in places.
Yeah, they rebuilt it several times.
Oh, that's why.
After the storms came and knocked it down.
Oh, yeah. So just
according to legend.
Right. According to fictional legend.
But yeah, the young Blackwood lad and the Bracken guy who's heckling his little speech for the princess's hand, and they end up coming to blows.
David versus Goliath.
So that was awesome. And at the end, I was like, oh man, they probably killed that little kid. And then it's the kid who comes out on top. I was like, yes, love it.
It was so funny. The guts are spilling out and he's on the ground, coughing up blood and spurts and everything. I was like, no way. At first, I thought that was another Baratheon because of the sigil, but looking more closely, it looks like a deer, like a regular old deer or a horse or something.
I can't remember.
I think it's a horse.
The Bracken's sigil, but
yeah.
And in the middle of all that, when they're leaving, Boromon Baratheon says, "Sheathe that still, you twats."
Yeah, that was great too. Twats. That's always a fun word. Cracks me up. I noticed also the first shot of this scene. It's zoomed in on the necklace, and as she's meeting all these potential
That's how we
suitors,
open the episode.
all she can do is fiddle with the necklace, touching Daemon's gift to her. It was
Probably
a little bit of foreshadowing. Yeah, I think that Daemon really is occupying her heart at this moment. For some reason, these Targs just are attracted to their own family members.
Yeah,
it's like a genetic
my next note was Daemon, when he's in the throne room, Viserys asks, who holds the stepstones, the tides, the crabs,
a cool response.
And 2,000 dead Triarchy corsairs staked to the sand to warn those who might follow.
Great response. The tides that tides stuck out to me.
Hold the stepstones. It's pretty epic.
Yeah, very artistic. And it reminds me of Vlad the Impaler. Crazy stories about him. When his country was being invaded, Vlad of Wallachia, as he was known at the time, he took his army and ran through his own countryside, destroying and burning everything in the way, so that when the invading army showed up, they were like, "Oh my God, it's already been ransacked here." Left no supplies or water sources for food for them. They were like, "Dude, if this guy's crazy enough to do this to his own countryside, maybe we shouldn't mess with this guy," you know?
Crazy.
Yeah, Vlad, what a gangster.
We didn't talk too much about the scene with Kristen Cole and Rhaenyra, but my note was Cole in his white cloak. She started off, playing coy with him and took his helmet, and then she dropped it. Or no, he went to reach for it, and she moved it and just moved in and kissed him.
Yeah, very clever of her.
Whoa. She's like, whoa. And then later she drops the helmet.
Great Foley effects for that sound. It sounded really legit.
That's not the sound I thought a solid Magneto helmet would make.
Yeah, it seems like it's got some kind of stuff going on.
2050 or whatever, a futuristic, made out of an alloy.
Yeah,
it's we're not in futuristic X-Men. We're in medieval times, so the helmet would sound like they made it sound when it
rattles
hit the floor.
A bit.
But I'm expecting this sound like the ring dropping in Fellowship of the Ring. That Magneto helmet's like, but anyway, this is made out of medieval metal. I'm not going to go an episode without mentioning the Magneto helmet.
Hell no. Always worth mentioning.
But they, finally Cole sort of, he plays hard to get for a while, and you can tell that he wants to, but he knows his oath is to the king and to the realm, vows of chastity.
Yeah, he's looking back at the door, and then
obviously he's not supposed to, be getting frisky with the princess.
Rule number one.
Desires of the flesh, being what they are. And that he's the guard at the door, so it's so easy for him to get caught.
Right.
Anybody, the Lord Commander or anybody else just has to make their rounds. It's like, where's Kristen Cole?
Yeah. Oh, oh
no. So something happened to the princess, and they just enter without even knocking, and then there they are. But anyway, so far that hasn't happened. But when she takes off, his van braces and different pieces of his armor, takes off his neck. It's called like a gorget, maybe?
Yeah, I think
can't
so.
Remember. And then she takes off the cloak and hands it to him. And he looks down at it for a second.
Yeah.
And
symbolic moment.
Knowing what that cloak means. It's white, for the King's Guard. They're supposed to be pure and noble, and not supposed to have a wife or a family or even lovers.
Just taking it off in that moment is symbolic as well. But then he emphasizes the symbolism of removing the cloak by taking a moment to stare at it. It was pretty smartly done.
So, and then, from then on, they're, into each other, and
Yeah.
Did it seem like some of them were like sort of spy shots? Like
Yeah, it
somebody
did.
could have been the rats, back to the rats.
Yeah, looking through the bars of the, something rather. And
Could have been. And some of it was like using Hollywood filming techniques to cover, certain parts of Kristen Cole and Renera, so that, they weren't too overly exposed.
That's that tasteful direction that I was talking about.
But some of it seemed like it wasn't just that. It was like sort of the vibe of the shot. A few different ones was like that there was somebody creeping on them.
Yeah.
Not like where you could hear them breathing or anything, nor there's obvious. But it was like they were sort of, it seemed like they were playing with the idea of the rats.
Yeah. I got that vibe too, for sure. I thought it was interesting also that she left through the secret passageway, but she returned the normal way. So Sir Kristen Cole was like, what the? I thought you were in there, and now you're coming back.
How'd you get out here? Yeah.
I thought at first, like, why would she do that? But subconsciously, Daemon had gotten her blood up and gotten her, like, in the mood, and so maybe she just wanted an excuse to draw him into the room, and so she went through the regular way, and knowing that she would run into Kristen Cole and have to interact with him. Maybe it was on purpose, maybe it was subconscious. But either way, she opened the door for servants to see her coming through the gate into the Red Keep during the hour of the owl, I think it was, with dressed as a page. So she blew up her own stealth completely unnecessarily. She's still learning, Pretty funny. And Daemon had just told her, that marriage is for politics, but once it's over, you can, like, the Targaryens can, like, fuck whoever they want, basically. So she's apparently took that to heart and, made her move on Kristen Cole. There's been this will they, won't they thing going on with them, too, for a few episodes since what was it, the second? No, I guess it was the first episode when he asked for her favor during the jousting tournament.
Yeah, that was the first episode.
Yeah, so that's been being established pretty much this whole time. So that finally came to fruition. And if her feelings had been hurt by Daemon, who she may have interpreted it as him as, like, just leaving and being a dick, she seemed to be able to get over it pretty quickly because she wasn't pouting or moping around like Jon Snow, mopey bastard. She seemed like upbeat and playful and not like upset by what ended up happening with Daemon. When she seemed upset when she had initially left the pleasure house, but not anymore.
She had that walk back to the Red Keep to think about what she wanted to do with Kristen Cole.
Yeah. And I was just thinking, man, like, that is a lot of garments to take off for the King's Guard.
Yeah, they're both sitting there trying to unlace their boots and, like, kind of laughing about how ridiculous it is.
Yeah. And if he's going to get caught, like, if someone knocks on the door, like, where's Sir Kristen? He can't just, like, put his clothes back on real quick. He's busted.
It'll take like 10 minutes.
The way that she was taking off his clothes, too, it kind of seemed like an opposite of the way that Khal Drogo undressed Daenerys. I got that kind of vibe a little bit there, reverse roles sort of thing.
Yeah.
Where she's in control and he's, like, being dragged into the situation as opposed to the other way around. And there's romantic music playing during this part. So it's giving the impression that, Sir Kristen Cole is not being like raped here. He's a willing participant according to the music.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty kind of interesting.
Daemon's haircut, you like it or not?
And before we see him, when the bloodworm comes swooping down over the ship there, you hear the squeaking squeal of the bloodworm in the distance before you see it. And it's him because of our hearing it at the showdown on the bridge at Dragonstone. So that was kind of cool. I heard that squeal and I was like, oh, it's the bloodworm.
The bloodworm.
Killer.
Yeah, I as the episode went on, his haircut kind of grew on me, but at first, especially with that driftwood crown, I think it was called, I didn't like it at all. I was like, this is terrible. Give me long hair Daemon, like from episode 1, he's sitting on the throne, and then he's standing there and he gives Rhaenyra the necklace, and his his hair, I mean, it's like perfectly straight down, and it's just,
Yeah, it's like the Thor movie when he
That's-
cuts his hair all of a sudden, and it's like, what the hell? Like you're
Yeah.
you're Thor, you have long hair. And, yeah, like he was a
so
Targaryen.
I still don't really, I still don't love it. It's growing on me, but I'd rather
Yeah, I can deal with it.
give me long hair, Daemon.
He's looking sharp. But yeah, long hair Daemon is pretty badass.
I wonder if Matt Smith, the actor, was like, okay, I've shot in this wig, the long wig, for however many weeks now. Yeah, y'all got to do something else. I can't deal with it.
No way. Because if you sign up for a role like that, you can't be like upset about the costume of just a few
Right.
weeks into shooting. You know what I mean? Like you're in
Yeah,
this for the long haul. If you had an issue with the hair, you shouldn't have taken the job in the first place.
Right.
But I mean, I see what you're saying. Anything's possible.
Anything's possible!
Anything is possible. Really cool scene. And I was not expecting the direction that this took with him pledging fealty to the throne and giving his crown over to Viserys and making a big show of it. Apparently in the book, this happens during like some kind of tournament and he flies in on the dragon and like makes a big scene.
Yeah, that would have been cool to see, but
Just another
They're saving-
expensive set piece.
yeah, they're saving the CGI, the dragon CGI budget.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, can we just do this in the throne room? It's just the people. It'd be way simpler to film than
Way
doing
simpler.
the dragon and all that.
And just as effective. Like everybody's like, oh my God, here he is. And we got the dragon swooping in over the boat too. So we got like,
Yeah.
all the cool elements of the thing. Then there's the garden party and it's just interesting seeing everybody so happy. Like, it can't possibly last with all these friendships being rekindled and,
Mhm.
stuff like that. Amends being made and everything. And it's so sad between Viserys and Daemon because Viserys just loves Daemon so much and Daemon loves Viserys so much and they just can't manage to keep it together. Like no matter what they do, they end up aggravating each other one way or another. And Renera sticks up for Alicent in the moment where they're talking about the tapestries and she's like, well, I'd like to see them. Like, it's not a terrible idea, Alicent.
Yeah.
Sort of how Alicent had stuck up for her at the hunt, saying, well, she was just more suited for the role,
Mhm.
And then she goes off to sit alone.
My last note was kind of what Viserys said when he was talking to Alicent about, what happened between Rhaenyra and Daemon. And I can't remember who said it. Whatever transpired, Rhaenyra is not innocent. I think Viserys said that.
Yeah.
Only because Daemon tried to corrupt her. And then the main line that I wrote down was, Daemon and Rhaenyra share the blood of the dragon. They're restless and chaotic.
Yeah, totally true. They both have that like snarky, stubborn vibe to them. There's an interesting moment while Daemon and Rhaenyra are talking in the Godswood too, where they walk away and he grabs a glass of wine and sits down and they have a conversation in Valyrian and they're talking about the bronze bitch, his wife at the Vale. And she almost hits on him. They're talking about, how unlucky you can be with a political marriage. And for women, it's like a death sentence. But then she says, your wife has been fortunate, and it's kind of like, oh, because she's married to you, Daemon, like, and that's cool. But then she, like, after like a comedic pause, she says, you haven't put a baby in her, And it's not fortunate that she's with Daemon. It's fortunate that Daemon hasn't knocked her up, which is kind of funny. And I noticed he passes the glass of wine to her. And in sort of like turns into this like sort of intimate moment where they're sharing a glass of wine. And I have in my notes, Daemon and Rhaenyra are sharing a glass of wine like Saul Goodman and Kim Wexler share cigarettes.
Nice.
Where they're kind of lounging around and they're passing a
Mhm.
cigarette back and forth. That's like the same vibe I was getting here with them sharing the glass of wine. And so in response to the jape about not putting a baby in his bronze bitch, he replies saying, I doubt a child could grow in such hostile environs. And to me, this reminded me of Scarface. He has a quote where he's like, man, I can't even have a little baby with her, man.
I can't even have a kid with her, man. Her womb is so polluted. I can't even have a fucking little baby with her.
Womb is so polluted. Talking with his wife about like how she's like addicted to Quaaludes and all this stuff. and her womb is like polluted. It reminded me of this. I doubt a child could grow in such hostile environs. Oh, during the small council meeting, Viserys is talking about how Lord Corlys can't still be mad about the slight and not marrying Lena, and he says certainly he cannot still be wroth. And I just thought wroth is a cool word, WROTH, not wrath, wroth, meaning wrathful. So that was cool usage of words. It's something that's been said a few times in this series and the books. I definitely remember it from this whole thing. And they mention how a marriage to the family would, if Lord Corlys is going to marry his daughter off to the Bravosi trading lords, sea lords, they'll have to make their own attempt at a marriage, an alliance through marriage with the Valerians, and it cuts to Renera, and you can tell she knows they're talking about her, and she has some subtle facial movements that were some pretty nice acting. I thought that was good.
Yep.
There's some interesting parallels between Mysaria and Varys. Clearly that they use children to manage their whispers. But she also talks about how she's left her life behind in the skin trade. And it reminded me of Varys too, because before Varys started selling secrets, he was selling his body.
That's right.
Hard lessons are not welcomed, but suffered. And so maybe this could be hinting that we could see her rise into a true master of whispers, developing a spy network throughout King's Landing in sort of a Varys-style manner, which I think would be pretty cool. That'd be sweet. And she looks just disgusted with him when she leaves, so it lends credence to the idea that she's been working for Otto for quite some time, potentially. Oh, when Rhaenyra enters the Godswood to meet with Alicent, I noticed another cool style of dragon brazier. Like, we get some cool braziers in King's Landing down in the city that are like spitting flames. And then here there's one that's, as she walks through the door into the Godswood set, its head is like sticking in its neck or sticking out from next to the door and kind of craning upwards, and it's got a torch in its mouth.
Nice.
Lots of cool dragon stuff. And this set is just pretty cool. It's not something we've seen in Game of Thrones. It's a new set, just like this little courtyard off to the side of the castle where they have this tiny little Godswood with just the one tree, the heart tree. Interesting that the builders of the Red Keep decided to include that, considering that the Targaryens have no allegiance to the old gods or anything. They must have just been trying to assimilate with the culture of the locals, to the old gods, the seven, to make everybody feel like they're welcome, and to bring everybody together. Probably part of the act of conglomerating the seven kingdoms into one was making sure that all of the religions and things were represented at the capital effectively. I love the Godswood set, by the way. It's really cool. Oh, when Daemon arrives back to the Red Keep, all drunken in the morning, he stumbles up to the gate. The bells are tolling, and it came to mind for whom the bell tolls. Or
the bells tolling the surrender of King's Landing and the finale, and then Dany goes crazy.
Oh yeah, there's lots of the bells. That episode is called too. Yeah, in this case, it's like they're ominously foreboding, and it's signaling he's about to get banished. Basically, they're tolling for his banishment. Effectively, they're not, but it's just kind of a ominous way for him to arrive that I thought was pretty cool. And that wraps up notes for me as well.
Awesome.
So, all right, stick with us. We'll be right back after a short break. All right, let's go to Raven's calls.
What's up? It's Archmaester Stitches, man, and sorry for the background noise. I'm at work this morning, but yeah, last night's episode, I've like been praising this show amongst my friend circles of them like interlacing action and political intrigue and you know, all of that stuff so well. Like, we get dragons, then we get garden walks. Dude, this episode took that and just like kicked it down the road. This was like mixing political intrigue, softcore porn, political intrigue, pedophilia,
Yeah, seriously.
incest. I know it's based on like you know, medieval times, not the theme park, but you know, fucking Jesus Christ though, dude. I was just like, all right, I get it. Can we do a cutaway scene now? We understand. Okay, wow, they're still going. Oh, wow, it's still going. Okay, great. This is like Cinemax now, like from the late 90s.
Oh, man. Scrambled.
Yeah, I mean, I've read Fire and Blood, and I know y'all aren't doing any spoilers on it, so I'm not gonna step into any of that, but I do like the fact that they deviated from a lot of that, because I think y'all said it before, that book is from the point of view of a fool and a few maesters, and those people aren't actually in a room with like crispy coal and stuff like that. So I think it's gonna piss a lot of the nerdy like naysayers, like that's not what happened, you know. But is it? That's the cool thing about, you know, the source material being a textbook written by third parties.
Rumors.
And I did enjoy that part. I will definitely say it's probably my least favorite episode. It didn't feel like filler. I've seen a lot of people saying it was just a filler episode, because I think a lot of shit got moved along. But I was really hoping for like a fucking 5 or 7 year time jump or something.
That's this week, I think.
It'd come like just a few months later. And what's up with like cutting your hair to look like Doctor Who, only like bleached blonde? I mean, the curl came out and everything. I'm like, come on, guy. Come on, man. What are we doing?
Doctor Who?
You got like a t-shirt that's gonna have a silhouette of your hair you're trying to sell. Get out of here.
Exterminate.
But yeah, I would say I didn't not like the episode. It was just, you know, not laced with like a big ass, you know, not a battle, but just even like that dragon face off we had in episode 2. Like,
only that.
I mean, that wasn't like a battle or
gutted.
anything, but it was just still, it was tense and epic. That's what I felt like it was missing. There was no tense, epic scene in this. My favorite part was fucking Viserys actually walking out looking like the dragon. You know, he's got all of his wounds hidden, and he comes out all black garb and just starts kicking the shit out of Daemon. You know, I was like, whoa, this guy actually, you know, showing he's got some balls.
That was badass.
Speaking of other scene that involved his balls, God, that was cringeworthy. Anyway, but that's the point. All those wounds all over him. I'm like, oh, that poor thing. I felt so bad for Allison.
So nasty.
It's gross. It's fucking horror movie gross. All right, yeah. Anyway, good show, guys. As always, keep up the great feedback and follow up and all that kind of stuff for the episodes, because it gets me through. I look forward to Tuesdays and Wednesdays and whenever these episodes drop. And thanks again for all the shout outs for Hearing the Haunted and Sirenicide. And I'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks so much for calling in, Johnny. We love you, buddy. And yeah, quite a departure from the previous episodes. I totally feel where you're coming from on that. Lord Anthony of House Alacon says, what a fucking great episode. The beautiful mess that this will create is super juicy. Loved it. 5 out of 5 for sure. Yeah, this was a good episode.
Very nice. We talked about Sir Matthew Repp said he overplayed his hand.
Yeah.
Matthew Repp continues, oh boy, what an episode. I thought a major theme this week was going to be reconciliation with Varys and Daemon burying the hatchet or adding it to the throne, and Renera and Alicent finally reconnecting after many years. Both seem to have been short-lived as Daemon is sent packing back to the Vale and Renera has Otto removed from King's Landing after he overplayed his hand.
Pun intended.
Also, you just love to see a good mummer's farce.
Yeah.
And in true Shakespearean tradition, all female parts are played by men. It's nice to see that by the time Arya takes in the theater, they have accepted women into the arts.
Oh, yeah, true. Because the actress that she is kind of working with there, I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm. Lady Crane.
Oh, Lady Crane. Right. Lady Amanda of House Massey says, coming from just a show watcher, this episode felt like a waste. But knowing the GOTCU, there is a reason we got a whole episode of Renera and Daemon. 3 thinking face emojis. Also, is it just me or do we all still feel like Renera is only 15? Yes, she looks very young, and it was hard to watch the whole scene in the brothel and with Kristen Cole for me, because she looks like a child to me.
Yeah, they're telling us that she has aged through these time jumps, but she looks very young.
And Daemon even says it at one point, and you've matured over these last 4 years, princess. And I'm like, really, has she?
KoriEugene Kuhn sent a still of Renera sitting in the Hand's chair from last episode, saying that they fast forwarded and rewound several times looking for this clip after Viserys depends the hand of the king. I thought I spotted a foreshadow in the episode only to realize the scene was from episode 3 last week, Renera sitting in the Hand's seat. Perhaps I spotted it in the previously on House of the Dragon clips and thus thought it was from episode 4. Either way, seeing her in his seat had the hairs on the back of my neck stand at full attention.
I see what you did there.
Speaking of heirs, was that some broken wind by Viserys while laughing it up with Daemon about those orgy tapestries? Oh man, I got to go back and listen. I didn't catch it. I did hear it in the first episode when they were pulling the pants down of the raper.
Yeah.
But I didn't hear it this episode. Nice.
Yeah, that's worth a rewind for sure to check out.
You can listen to that now.
And we read Lady Rachel of House Katevis's comment earlier, but let's read it again because it was good. She says, the whole sequence of Daemon taking advantage of Renera hit me really hard. That was a fantastic display of real-world grooming. From drunken, hazy, confusing attention to be left cold, underdressed, embarrassed, and alone. Claire Kilner, ladies and gents. What a director. And I agree. Love the direction in this episode. Everything from Daemon, the angle looking up at Daemon's armor as he walks into the sword, to the the classiness of the lead actress's nude scenes where you don't see anything but you kind of see everything, and it was what was the word I used before? Tasteful. Yeah, I thought it was pretty tastefully shot. So it makes sense that it was a woman shooting it with that eye for, tasteful presentation of this type of thing, for sure. All right, that's our show, episode 124. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks so much.
And a huge thank you to John Bailey, the epic voice guy from the Emmy-nominated Honest Trailers, for announcing our show. Another huge thanks to our epic patrons on Patreon: Sirenicide, Lord John of House Grilz, Sir Matthew of House Repp, Lord Jeremiah of House Becker, and the last High Gardener of High Garden, Sir KoriEugene of House Kuhn. And we'd like to extend a warm thank you to Tarot Spirit for your donation as well. On another note, if you enjoy my take on things, you might be excited to learn that I'm working on a project of my own. It's a series in a novel screenplay hybrid form that I'm already over 1,100 pages into writing. Solving the mystery of the pyramid's purpose, uncovering the occulted, discovering the history of humanity lost to the ages, deciphering the fate of ancient gods, Egypt, lost civilizations, Tesla, Roswell, flood mythology, Hollow Earth, the fall of the Third Reich. What is the truth at the core of it all? The Core Saga. More details coming soon. If you'd like to donate or subscribe to support us, you can go to paypal.me/GOM podcast or patreon.com/GOM podcast to donate an amount of your choosing. There are links to both at gameofmicrophones.com.
doing some online shopping, then go on over to gameofmicrophones.com, scroll down to the bottom, and click on our link to Amazon. As an Amazon associate, we earn from qualifying purchases. Any contribution you make helps, and you can help secure the continued existence of GOM.
And make sure to check out Sirenicide, the serialized horror drama podcast featuring me and Archmaester Stitches. Go to Sirenicide.com and download it wherever you get podcasts. And while you're at it, check out Hearing the Haunted, the horror anthology podcast that follows up Sirenicide. Next episode, we'll be covering House of the Dragon, Season 1, Episode 5, We Light the Way. We'll be recording on Monday afternoons for the rest of the season, so make sure to send us your episode feedback as quickly as possible following the show's airtime so we can include your thoughts on Game of Microphones.
If you'd like to call us, you can call us at 813-JOFFREY. That's 813-563-3739.
If you'd like to write in, you can email us at ravens@gameofmicrophones.com.
Make sure to join us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/GOM podcast. Each week, we'll be posting a feedback thread where you can leave your thoughts and comments on new episodes for us to read on air.
Imp slap. You can also watch Game of Microphones on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and BitChute. Audio podcasts are great, but video is better. We're also currently trying to build our tiny subscriber count, so go to youtube.com/Game of Microphones and subscribe right now. Likes, comments, and shares are appreciated.
Also on Twitter, Instagram, Gab, and Minds at GOM Podcast.
And we're on Tumblr too at Game of Microphones. All right, that's our show. Thanks for listening.
My princess, ours is a bond that has long endured, since Lucas Blackwood, the grandsire of my grandsire, aided the dragon in his war of conquest.
Aye, the Blackwoods truly turned the tide on that one.
If chosen as your match, princess, your days shall be easy and nights safe under my protection.
Protection? The princess has a dragon, you dumb cunt.
A real mummer's farce.
Yeah, yeah. Horn farts and all. Please consider taking the black and helping us get out of the red by helping to support us. Showing a lot without really I'm gonna cut that part out. Fuck me. And she doesn't realize it when she says it that it's slightly insensitive to Allison's situation.
Slightly. Just slightly. It's like, this is your life, Allison, and it sounds like the worst. Who would want to do that? Oh, Renera just took the high ground. So, you're just going to marry me off to solve your political headache. He said, you are my political headache.
Your sister. He's going to push her through the moon door like little finger.
I remember when I first saw that, I was like,
yeah,
little finger.
Oh
my word.
Do you wish to know your death, child? It's like, how do you know it's a child? A tragical cooking accident. Did I say tragible? Tragic cooking accident. Oh, man. I think I got the wrong thing pulled up. That's what she said.
A feud as old as time. A feud as old as time.
That's what I was thinking. What is wrong with us? Oh, it's the bloodworm.
The bloodworm. Scroll down to the bottom and clink. Scroll down to the bottom and click on our link to Amazon. I'll call Blackwood.
You call Blackwood? All right. Sounds good.